Thanks for listening to another cozy mystery audiobook by Rosie A. Point. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Carrot Cake Jailbreak by Rosie A. Point.
Chapter 1. It's a conspiracy. Mrs. Schickster, my neighbor from across the hall, held a candle in a brass holder, the flame flickering when she talked. I'm telling you, Charlotte, no good will come of this. You mark my words. This has never happened before, right? I asked. Never. Not for this long, and certainly not during the bitter cold of winter. Mrs. Schickster shivered dramatically, clasping her robe close to her body and peering up and down the darkened hall of our apartment building. I wouldn't personally have gone as far as to call gossip's winters bitter cold, but I understood the sentiment. The power had been out in gossip for 2 days. There were technicians working to figure out what had happened, but there had hardly been any updates. Businesses were doing their best to cope, running generators if they had them, with most folks complaining bitterly about the cold or the fact that they couldn't take a hot bath. "Do you know what I heard?" Mrs. Schickster asked while Sunlight, my inquisitive ginger cat, wound between my legs, purring. "What?" I asked. "I heard that this was the work of criminals," she murmured. "That they cut power lines at strategic points all along the outskirts of town. The very same power lines that feed the town." I wasn't one for conspiracy theories, but where there was smoke, there was a fire, and I'd seen enough during my time as a spy to know that anything was possible. I picked up Sunlight and hugged him to my chest, stroking his fur and enjoying the responding affection. There wasn't much else to do but listen to Mrs. Schickster next door. We'd bonded over the incident over Halloween, and she'd fast become one of my friends, gossiping with me about every little thing that happened in and out of the apartment building. She was a member of the Grapevine, so I had to hold back on a lot of details about myself and happenings at the Gossip Inn. It wasn't that I didn't trust Mrs. Schickster, it was that I didn't need another innocent civilian at risk, because of my choices. "I'm sure they'll get it fixed soon," I said, as a cold wind rattled around the outside of the building. It was past 9 at night, and while I wasn't the best cook in the world, I'd whipped up some scrambled eggs on the gas stove for dinner. That was 2 nights in a row. If this didn't end soon, I'd pack my things and head to the Gossip Inn. Just the thought of Lauren's carrot cupcakes had my mouth watering. "I'm not so sure," Mrs. Schickster said, the candle wobbling in her grasp. "I'm telling you, Charlotte, it's criminals. You'll see." And then she bid me goodnight and hurried back into her apartment. She locked the door, drawing the latch dramatically behind her. I laughed under my breath and kissed Sunlight's furry head. "Criminals, eh?" Sunlight meowed. "You can't seriously be in agreement with her." I entered my apartment and shut the door, the candles I'd lit flickering on the coffee table from the gust of wind. "You know I'm going to grab the kettle and make some tea." Another meow, this one of judgment. "I'm equipped to make tea, Sunlight. Just because I burned myself that one time doesn't mean anything." I dropped my gorgeous cat on the comfy sofa and proceeded through to the kitchen alone. A noise outside the building made me freeze. I listened hard, then forced myself to relax. I had to get over this. After recent events, I was on edge. The thought that my grandmother might be in danger, or that our lives in gossip could come to such a sudden end, haunted me. Day and night, I worried about it, and hid that worry so that I wouldn't put any pressure on Gamma. She had enough on her plate with the inn and the rambunctious guests, as well as the kitten foster center and the adopt-don't-shop drive she had going on at the moment. I put the kettle on the stove and waited patiently for it to boil, staring through the steam and out of my apartment window at the street outside. Darkness. Darkness as far as the eye could see, apart from the odd flickering candle in the building next door. The worst part was, I couldn't even see the stars because of the storm clouds that had rolled in. Spatters of rain tapped against the window, as if the universe had heard my thoughts, followed by a crack of lightning that illuminated the building. And a shadowy silhouette across the street. What the? My heart pounded in my chest, and I leaned in, trying to make out what it had been. A person, definitely, but... Another flash of lightning, but the street was empty. "Suspicious," I murmured, just as my phone rang from the living room. Thankfully, I'd charged it this evening with the last of the juice from my power bank. I hurried through and grabbed my phone from the coffee table. Gamma's name flashed on the screen. "Georgina?" I answered. "What's going on?" "Prison Break." "I haven't watched it." "Not the show, the actual thing, Charlotte," Gamma said. "There's been a prison break." "What?" I scraped a hand over my forehead, fatigued. "Georgina, what are you?" Gamma huffed on the other end of the phone. "Really, Charlotte? Were you sleeping at this hour?" "No." "Then why are you suddenly slow as molasses on the uptake?" There has been a prison break. 2 prisoners have broken out of the gossip prison, the one that's just outside of town. I've just heard the news through my grapevine. Gamma sighed. It explains the power outage for the past couple of days. Something was wrong. I knew it. I should have gotten involved sooner, but it's too late now. What do we need to do? They're going to implement a shelter in place soon, Gamma said. The news is about to break. My suggestion is that you and Sunlight get over to the inn before it's too late. I need your help here, Charlotte. I'll pay you for it. Don't be ridiculous. I don't want you working for free. I need the inn ground secured and guarded at all times. I need you to figure out if this is coincidental or by design. I knew exactly what she meant by that. Was this the work of her enemies? Or my enemies? Or was it just a bid for freedom on the part of the prisoners? There was no way Mrs. Schickster had been right. But here we were. Gamma could handle spy work by herself, but she had a lot to manage at the moment. "We'll be there," I said. "Good," Gamma said. "I appreciate that, Charlotte. But I will need you to do one more thing before you make your way over to us." I'm all ears. Check on Lauren and her family. Make sure they're fine. Make sure they understand what's about to happen, or at least Lauren does, and get her recipe book while you're at it. We're going to need it if she can't come into work tomorrow, Gamma said. It's that serious. They're going to shut down the town, Gamma replied. We have to act fast. I'm on my way. In the kitchen, the kettle began to scream. Chapter 2. I had chosen the life of a spy with the NSIB, partly because I'd wanted to be like my grandmother, the only motherly figure I'd ever known, and partly for the thrill. There was nothing quite as exciting as moving in the shadows, sneaking where others could catch you, and then not getting caught. I hadn't envisioned sneaking through gossip with a cat on my back in a thunderstorm as part of that job description. Sunlight's cat carrier was a clear plastic backpack with breathing holes that I'd picked up from a local pet boutique for a steal. He loved going for walks with me in it, but of course that excluded thunderstorms. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled, and Sunlight yowled at me angrily. I know, I cast over my shoulder. I know, but we've got to do this, so hang in there. I would never put my cat through discomfort unless it would end in his safety, and that was exactly what this was. I crept down side streets, avoiding Main Street. Already sirens howled and blue lights flashed in the night. We had to be quick. There was only a matter of time until they established a perimeter, and I would be caught and cut off from the Gossip Inn. It wasn't too difficult to avoid them yet, but the complaints from Sunlight set me on edge. I needed to get my cat out of the rain and over to the Gossip Inn, fast. 10 minutes later, I arrived at Lauren's house. I found her basement door unlocked, which was both useful and alarming, given that she knew exactly what kind of people there were in the world, as the only person in gossip who knew about our secret identities. There, I whispered, turning on the flashlight on my phone. We're out of the rain. Sunlight, to his credit, didn't meow at me in disdain, but kept quiet in the darkness beneath Lauren's house. I crept up to the inside door that led into her combined living room and kitchen. A woman's voice traveled through the wood. Sounded like Lauren was reading a story to her kids. I knocked on the door, lightly. Inside the house, someone let out a blood-curdling scream, and I rolled my eyes. Honey, you'll wake the kids, Lauren said inside the living room. It's just a scary story. You didn't hear that? Jason, my friend's husband, had a trembling, effeminate voice that annoyed me. Maybe that was just because he was one of my least favorite people in the world. Hear what? I heard you scream, Lauren said, sounding exhausted. No, someone knocked at the basement door. Oh. Woo. An awkward silence. I knocked again, and once again, Jason gave a high-pitched scream. Stop it, Jace, Lauren murmured. I'm going to check who it is. No, I'll go. You can't go. You're pregnant. 1 point for Jason for finding his chivalry buried deep down. Really deep down. Just stay here, Lauren said irritably, and then footsteps approached the door. She opened it a crack and peered at me. Oh, Charlie, it's you. I need to talk to you in private. Behind her, Jason popped up from a couch stained with use by toddlers. Hey, you can't just do that, you know. You can't just... I pointed a finger at him. Not in the mood, I growled. If you don't want people intruding in your home, maybe consider locking your darn doors. He paled and lowered himself back into his seat. Lauren and I descended the basement steps, and I held out a hand for her to make sure she was safe. It wasn't much longer now until the baby came. She was just about to enter her 3rd trimester. What's this about, Charlie? Is it the power outage, or the... I talked to Georgina, I said softly. There's been a prison break. Lauren gasped, pressing a hand over her mouth. Yeah, she wanted me to check that you're okay. They're going to make everyone shelter in place. Hopefully the power will be on soon, but I came to warn you. I gestured to the basement doors that led out into the rainy backyard. You really need to start locking your doors. Okay, Lauren said. But this is bad, Charlie. What are we going to do? What about the inn? That's kind of why I'm here. I need the book. Lauren's lips pursed. She didn't like giving away her sacred recipe book. She loved it so much, in fact, that she took it home with her every day after work. I know it's your secret book, I said, but if we don't have it, we can't cook anything worth eating for the guests. You know how useless I am. And I've rarely seen Georgina boil a kettle, let alone cook anything. It will be temporary. Lauren wet her lips, then let out a breath. Fine, she whispered. But wait here. She proceeded up the stairs again and opened the door. Jason yelped, and Lauren gave him a mouthful about being jumpy and waking the kids. She returned a few minutes later, toting the heavy, leather-bound recipe book, and handed it over. Protect this with your life, Charlie, she said. If anything happens to it, I'm going to blame you. Lauren was always sunshine and unicorns, so the change in attitude had to mean she was deadly serious. I understand, I said, taking the book from her. You can put it in your backpack. Not really. Sunlight's in there. Oh, Lauren circled to get a good look at it. Well, would you look at that? Hold on, let me get you a raincoat so you can cover the book. Never mind me, I called. Totally fine over here. Lauren returned again, took the book, and lovingly wrapped it in the waterproof coat. I want a picture every night. Huh? All of what you made, how it turned out, with the recipe book beside it. This is my 4th child, Charlie. I hope you know that. And then she handed me the book. Be careful with it. Wilco. I walked toward the back door, then paused. Just lock the doors, all right? Jason might be jumpy, but there's about to be a good reason for it. 2 prisoners have escaped, and with the power out. There might be more. Exactly, I said, and then I exited the house and waited for Lauren to latch the basement doors behind me. Chapter 3. The road to the inn was slick with water, but I didn't take it, opting instead to walk along the line of trees that bordered the street. It was easier to dodge out of sight when a car drove past, and the canopy provided shelter from the rain. Sunlight meowed at me again. Almost there, I said. Just keep your meows to a minimum, would you? A flash of lightning punctuated my words, showing me the empty street, the pattering of rain on the black tar. It was an ominous sight, but the inn was near. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I brought it out and answered without looking at the caller ID. Charlotte, Gamma's voice came down the line, harried, my unflappable grandmother worried. Where are you? Almost there, I said. Not much longer now. I've collected the book and warned Lauren. I've evaded notice by the police. Hurry, Gamma said. Charlotte, hurry, even if you have to break the fence line. Is your perimeter working? Battery power. But that will run out soon if the power doesn't return. Just get here fast. And then she hung up. I didn't like how anxious she sounded. Just what type of prisoners had broken out? The gossip prison wasn't exactly a max security prison. It wasn't like they were keeping mafia bosses or serial killers in there, so what could have her this freaked out? I tucked my phone away and continued on, keeping my steps as light as possible. If my decorated spy grandmother was worried, then she had a good reason to be. The prison was closer to the inn than it was to gossip. Could that be why? Sunlight meowed incessantly. Almost there, I whispered. Almost there. And the minute we get to the inn, I'm going to make a fire in the library, and you can sit on a comfy sofa and snooze. I'll give you a treat too. I packed them. Besides, apart from the breathing holes in the backpack, the thing was waterproof. It wasn't like sunlight was getting soaked. He quieted, and I let out a sigh as I finally reached the fence line hidden between the trees. Gamma's perimeter, complete with alerts that directed to her phone and laptop, as well as cameras that recorded movement around the inn. To the untrained civilian eye, the fence looked like any other fence, and we had to keep it that way to protect both Gamma's cover and mine. The sound of footsteps in the underbrush sent me into a practiced crouch behind a tree. Lightning arced through the darkened sky again, illuminating the road and two figures who walked across it. One of them wore a plain orange jumpsuit. Coldness seeped through me that had nothing to do with the rain. A prisoner, and one other. Who were they, and why? What were they doing out here? A silver sedan pulled up on the side of the road, the headlights sluicing through the darkness, and I remained crouched, watching from behind my tree. I didn't bother removing the phone from my pocket. Gamma's cameras would pick this up, and I would risk giving away my position if they saw the light of my phone screen. The car doors opened, and a woman was illuminated inside behind the wheel. I caught the briefest glimpse of her face, pale, dark circles wearing a sneer, before the doors closed again. The car started off up the road. A screech of tires sounded, and I watched in horror as a black SUV pulled around the corner and careened toward the car that contained the escaped prisoner. The SUV slammed into the other car at full speed, and the front of the silver sedan crumpled, metal screeching and grating. I pressed a hand over my mouth, watching in horror. Steam rose from the hood of the sedan. The driver of the CV put the car in reverse, and then drove off, rushing through the darkness out of sight, plates obscured by black tape. "You can't tell him you saw it, Charlotte," Gamma said, from where she dished up kibble into a bowl for sunlight. My cat had instantly leaped out of the backpack the minute I opened it and darted toward Gamma. It was my punishment for having the audacity to bring him to safety at the inn. Sure, there had been lightning and thunder, but the alternative was leaving him alone at the apartment. I couldn't do that. "I've already reported it," I said. "I called 911. "Yes, that's fine," Gamma replied with a swish of her hand through the air. She strode past the kitchen table and placed the bowl of kibble out in the hall. Candles had been lit and set up everywhere, on every available surface, and the flickering light gave our conversation an ominous quality. "Fine? Hi. It's good that you reported," Gamma said. "But we'll tell them that we saw it on the cameras. You didn't give them too much information, I assume?" "I told them there had been a car accident outside the Gossip Inn," I said. "A black SUV with a silver sedan, a hit and run, no plates on the SUV." "That's all?" "Yes." Gamma let out a relieved sigh. Good, yes, then they won't ask too many questions." "What's going on, Georgina?" My grandmother gave me a long, silent stare. "Tell me. You've been on edge all evening." "There are prisoners at that prison that we put away," Gamma said. "Their escape could very well interfere with the inn." "Is that all that's bothering you?" I asked. "You're not normally this, tense." Yes, Gamma said. That's all. That's all. Yes. I didn't buy it. Gamma was hiding something, but usually, when she kept secrets like this, there was a good reason for it. I hoped that whatever this was, it wasn't too serious. I opened my mouth to press her for more details, but 3 heavy knocks sounded against the inn's front doors. Chapter 4. On the list of people I wanted to see after sludging through the rain, running a cookbook errand, and witnessing a horrific car accident, Detective Aaron Good was right at the bottom. Gamma opened the door for him and waved him out of the storm. Sunlight, having finished his kibble, wandered over and sniffed his wet boots with interest before coming up to me and rubbing the side of his face against my leg. A sign that I was forgiven for the late-night journey. I lifted him into my arms and cuddled his soft, dry fur. He purred happily. Thank goodness. The last thing I wanted was to traumatize my cat, but I had to put his health and safety first, and that meant bringing him with me. There was no guarantee that the shelter in place would end anytime soon, and I couldn't leave him behind if my grandmother needed me at the inn. But why? Why did Gamma so desperately want me here? What secret was she keeping? Why did she want to hire me? Aaron stood inside the inn foyer and glanced up and down the hall at the candles and Cocoa Puff, who'd come to investigate Sunlight's empty bowl outside the kitchen. Good's gaze landed on me, narrowed briefly, then moved away. Georgina, he said, how are you this evening? Well, Detective, the power has been out for 2 days. I'm running out of candles and patience, so I would say that it's not the best time. You called 911 about the car accident on the road? Charlotte made the call for me. We caught the incident on tape, Gamma said. I can bring you my laptop so you can see the footage. Footage which I wasn't in, thankfully. We'd checked the angle when I'd arrived and reported what had happened to Gamma. I'd been just out of shot, behind the tree. I'll be right back, Detective. Charlotte kindly offered the detective a beverage. I sighed heavily and gestured for Aaron to follow me to the kitchen. Your hair is wet, Aaron said. Why? Because I like the rain, I said. Smith, you'd better not. I went outside into the storm because one of the cats ran out there in a panic, I lied. And a pang of guilt swirled through my stomach. Since when did I care about lying to Good? As a spy, I'd come to terms with the fact that lying was a necessary part of the job, especially if it was employed to protect others. But the look Good gave me, the drawing down of his brows, the shake of his head, sent guilt spiraling through me. I didn't need more pressure when there was so much going on. Is everyone okay? I asked. The car accident looked pretty bad. 3 dead, Good said. I nearly dropped the kettle. Hot chocolate? Tea? Tea, Good replied. It's got the most caffeine. It's going to be a long night. And then he lowered himself to the table, filling the space with his presence and the scent of his spicy cologne. I can make you instant coffee. Can't turn on the pot at the moment, thanks to the power. Good pulled a face like I'd offered him a dead rat. Pass. Tea, then. I made it in silence. 3 dead. The 3 people in the car had all died, including that pale driver with the strange sneer. Strange because she hadn't looked angry. It had seemed like her mouth was moving independently from the rest of her face. And a prisoner dead. One of the 2. So where was the other one? The kettle whistled, and I reached for it. Good's hand stopped me. I hadn't heard him approach. Getting lax in your old age, Charlie. Careful. The handle's metal. You'll burn yourself. His words were quiet. I looked up at him, my pulse fluttering at how close he was to me. I can handle it, thanks. Another awkward quiet. Am I interrupting something? Gamma asked from the kitchen doorway. Good stepped away from me and smiled at her. Just stopping Miss Smith from getting 3rd-degree burns. I had it under control, I snapped, my ire returning fast. Gamma blew past the awkward moment and set the laptop down on the table. She showed Good the accident, and he rewound the footage several times, replaying it in slow motion, and trying to catch a glimpse of the people inside the car. His frown lines deepened. "I'm going to need a copy of this, Georgina." "Not a problem," she said. "I can give that to you right now." "Thanks." Good pinched the bridge of his nose, the tea I'd made him sitting on the table untouched. "I'm going to tell you too something that I do not want you to spread around. There was an escaped prisoner in that car." "What?" Gamma asked, covering her mouth. Her acting was fantastic. I arched both my eyebrows and acted shocked as well. "Yeah," Good said. "2 prisoners escaped from the gossip prison tonight. The sheriff has ordered everyone to shelter in place. The news will be put out on the radio." "And the power?" "We're hoping it will be back on soon," Good said. "But your guess is as good as mine when it comes to that. There are technicians working on it." Gamma copied the file over for Good and handed to him. He rose from the table. "Thank you, Georgina. Thank you for the tea, Miss Smith." And then he walked out of the kitchen and into the hall, his shoulders slumped. He turned back to look at us. "Don't leave the inn grounds. Got it?" "We'll be fine, Detective. Don't you worry about us," Georgina said with a smile. But Aaron's gaze rested on my face. Lingered for a tense second. "Do not leave the inn grounds," he repeated. "There are dangerous people around." But Detective Good didn't realize that 2 of those dangerous people were seated in the Gossip Inn's kitchen. "Good night, Detective," Gamma said. He waved goodbye, tucking the flash drive she'd given him into his pocket. Chapter 5. The following morning. My bedroom door banged open and hit the wall at 5 a.m. I had my gun out and pointed at Gamma as she strode into the room, fully dressed for the day, her makeup done, and a look on her face that could melt steel. "Charlotte, you're still in bed?" I lowered my weapon, blinking at her. I loved my grandmother, but I was not a morning person. "That's generally where people are at this time of the day," I said. "Yes, normal people or guests at the inn. But you are my only help until the shelter-in-place restriction is lifted. We have to start making breakfast." "Ah, right. Remind me why I decided to risk life and limb to get to the inn." Sure, I'd agreed to help, but it had been so long since I'd worked at the inn that I'd forgotten what it was like to get up this early. "You have 10 minutes to get yourself ready. And then we've got carrot cake to make, as well as eggs, bacon, and grits." And then she swept out of my room. Sunlight peered at me from the end of the bed. Cocoa Puff was curled up at my side, completely unconcerned by my grandmother's antics. I got out of bed, stretched, and made quick work of preparing for the day. I met my grandmother in the kitchen, and she barely glanced my way. Her hands were planted either side of Lauren's top-secret recipe book. She paged through it, frowning now and then. And then it hit me. The lights were on. "The power's back. Has been since 3 this morning, right after that awful storm abated," Gamma said. "But it doesn't change the fact that we're trapped here. I'm not sure how long they can keep the town on high alert, but there are important things that must be done." Gamma pointed to the fridge. "The carrots, Charlotte. Lauren used to instruct me, and I'd just do exactly as she said. It worked out pretty well." "Then that," Gamma said, with a snap of her fingers, "is what we'll do." And that was exactly what we did. We worked solidly for an hour, with a few hiccups along the way, but the smell of freshly baked cupcakes drifted through the kitchen and set me at ease. Gamma's phone rang and she excused herself to take the call. 10 minutes later, she returned. "We have their identities," she said. "We do?" "Yes, we'll have to finish up in the kitchen, serve the guests, and then head downstairs to the armory together." Gamma's tone was serious. "We have to figure out who did this and where the other prisoner is, Charlotte. It's of utmost importance." "Why?" I asked. Gamma didn't answer me. "We'll need the eggs next." I gritted my teeth and didn't press the issue. There was something my grandmother was hiding from me, and I was determined to find out what it was. 2 hours later, when the washing up was done, and the guests were sated and afraid the latter because of the shelter-in-place order, and the escaped convicts, Gamma and I headed out of the kitchen door and down the side of the inn. I unlocked the basement doors, and we descended into the darkness beneath the inn, navigating past the shroom shed and the eclectic collection of covered items. Gamma waved her hand over the armory door for admission, and we stepped inside. "Welcome, Georgina, welcome, Charlotte." The cool female voice that was Gamma's new AI system welcomed us. I grimaced. I wasn't a big fan of change, and that included intrusive AI voices, no matter how helpful. "All right," I said. "What have we got?" Gamma sat down on her stool, her gaze falling to the touchscreen desk in front of her, immediately in her element. The concern seeped from her body, and her back straightened, her posture immaculate as she started tapping away. My grandmother pulled up a profile, the holographic image projected above the desk so I could see it. "First victim," she said, was Sally Williamson. The image of the woman with the sneer and the dark circles under her eyes cropped up. The image was a mugshot, and the sneer was the result of a nasty scar down the left side of her face. "The driver," I said. "She picked them up on the side of the road. But who is she? Why was she there?" "Ex-convict." "Aggravated assault," Gamma said. "Looks like she served 2 years and paid a fine for her crime. Her victim isn't from gossip. Other than that, I don't recognize her. She doesn't look like she's from around here." "The town over, maybe. That prison serves the entire county. She might be connected to the prisoners another way." "Agreed," Gamma said, then flipped through to the next picture. A bearded guy with plenty of tattoos and a mean glint in his eyes. Another mugshot. "Waylon Dennis. Arrested and serving time for aggravated assault and bank robbery," Gamma said, her eyebrows rising. "Apparently he was due for parole soon because of good behavior and had served, goodness me, 10 years of his sentence." "The escaped convict." I shook my head. "That doesn't make any sense. Why escape when you were so close to obtaining freedom legally?" "A good point, Charlotte." Gamma stared at the image as if she could will him to talk. "I'll have to do more research on all of them." "And the final victim?" I asked. This is where it gets rather odd. Gamma pulled up the final picture. A young man with a broad smile. The picture had been pulled from a newspaper article, the title of which read, "Local Man Wins Pumpkin Carving Contest." "Isaiah Redding," Gamma said, "lives in Weston, just a couple miles away, and was a student. I don't understand how he's related to either of them or what he was doing in gossip at all. Why on the side of the road?" These were questions we'd have to answer. My phone trilled in my pocket, sending a spike of anxiety through my stomach. Chapter 6. I let out a breath at Lauren's name flashing on my phone screen. "Hey, Laure," I answered. "What's up? How are you guys holding up?" "Better now that the power's on," Lauren said, and the sound of her kids screeching and playing in the background nearly drowned her out. "I'm on my way back to the inn." "That's too dangerous," I said, immediately. "You don't want to get caught by the cops. There's still one prisoner on the loose." "Yeah, but they let us out." "They did?" "Sure, it was on the news and the radio this morning. We can get back to our normal lives," Lauren said, sounding relieved. "Apparently they think the other guy has already crossed state lines and most of the danger's gone. And they said they had the prison on lockdown too, so." "That's great news," I said. I didn't regret coming all the way out here, even if it was in a thunderstorm, because things could have gone awry. Who could have predicted what might happen with prisoners on the loose and the power out? "Yeah, so I can't wait. Y'all better have the kettle on by the time I get there. I'm in the mood for hot cocoa in this weather." "You bet." I hung up and told Gamma the news. But my grandmother didn't look as relieved as I felt. She stared at the image hovering above her high-tech desk and shook her head. "I'm going to stay down here for a while, Charlotte. I need more information." "All right, no problem. Anything I can get you? Hot chocolate?" But Gamma barely heard the words. I let myself out of the armory and took the careful journey out of the basement, checking to make sure that no one had seen me emerge. I shut the doors, then entered the kitten foster center that was attached to the side of the inn. Coming in here always helped me relax. The kittens meowed happily at me and demanded pets and cuddles, and I had some time to kill before Lauren made it to the inn. I played with the older kittens, checked their water and litter trays to help out, then finally let myself into the inn using the carved thick wooden door that separated the wings. The sound of Lauren clattering around in the kitchen made me smile, as did the sight of Cocoa Puff, Snowy and Sunlight sitting outside the entrance, all watching her. "What happened to the hot cocoa?" Lauren asked. "Darn, I forgot." "You get trapped in the foster center again?" "Guilty as charged." "While I've got you here," Lauren said, "good work on the carrot cupcakes. The cream cheese frosting is just right." I gestured to her recipe book on the counter. "It's all you." "Aren't you sweet?" Lauren's cherubic cheeks went pink, but her expression sobered. "Carrots." "Huh? Why?" "I need more carrots. Mind running to the grocery store for me?" She tapped her chin. "In fact, I've got a list." "Text it to me." I waved goodbye and headed off. I'd return to my apartment this evening, assuming Gamma didn't want me to hang around for a while. The shopping trip would give me some time to think about everything that had happened over the past day. And the way Gamma was behaving. I was convinced that she was keeping something from me. If only I could figure out exactly what it was. We didn't usually keep secrets from each other, but then who was I to complain about that when we were spies? Secret keeping was practically our default setting. The gossip grocery store had expanded, and now there were multiple checkout counters, extra aisles, and more selection. I grabbed a shopping cart and rolled it up and down the aisles, reading Lauren's list and humming along to the obscenely early Christmas music that tinkled through the speakers. "Carrots, eggs, chocolate, pickles," I murmured, pushing the cart along absently, my gaze on my phone. The end of my cart rammed into someone else's and I jerked it back. "Sorry," I said, "my bad." Judge Boys narrowed his eyes at me, looking strangely out of place in the grocery store without his robe. He was a mean man, and I'd run into him a couple of times at events around town. Boys sniffed. "Watch where you're going, will you?" I forced a bright smile. The Charlie mission in me wanted to ram my cart into his a second time, but the sweet Charlotte Smith would never do something like that. "Of course, Judge. It won't happen again." Judge Boys grunted under his breath and steered his cart away, giving me a disdainful side-eye as he passed. I didn't blame him for being on edge. He was the type of judge who gave criminals the harshest sentence possible, and he served the town and the county with an iron fist. I finished my shopping, paid for everything, and headed out the door with a brown paper bag, just in time to witness Judge Boys striding across the road with shopping of his own. A familiar screech of tires rent the air, and a black SUV with tinted windows and tape over its plate drove down the road, heading directly for Judge Boys. He looked up and froze, staring at the oncoming car. It was as if time slowed to a crawl, and my heartbeat thudded in my ears. I dropped the grocery bag, heedless of the mess, and darted across the street. I collided with the judge and pushed him onto the opposite sidewalk, seconds before the SUV zoomed past. "What the?" Boys groaned, grasping at his arm. I think you broke my arm." I straightened, my gaze chasing after the killer, but the SUV was already out of sight. "Did you get a good look at the driver?" What? Boys had gone pale. I checked his arm, but it wasn't resting at an odd angle. I gingerly checked his wrist, and he winced and tried to pull away. "Might be a sprain," I said. "I'll call 911, just don't move." Boys nodded, licking his lips. "Did you get a good look at the driver?" I repeated. The judge was covered in a thin sheen of sweat, and it looked as if he might pass out at any moment. He shook his head. Darn. Chapter 7. Thankfully, my assessment of the judge's injury had been correct. It was just a sprain. Naturally, Boys was angry about it. "You could have killed me," he whined, from the back of the ambulance, as an EMT wrapped his wrist. Good stood nearby, talking to an officer. "I could have killed you?" I asked. "Me?" I turned around, looking for the person he was talking to, because it surely couldn't be the woman who'd broken a dozen eggs in an effort to save his life. Lauren was going to kill me for that. Yes, you. You pushed me over. Is he in shock? I asked the MT. He must be in shock. Judge Boys, if I hadn't pushed you down, you would be dead. You realize the driver of the SUV was trying to knock you over, right? Boys broke eye contact with me. I don't know that. You don't know that? The guy was doing twice the speed limit, and you stood there like a deer in darn. Smith. Good's voice was a good interruption. I'd started letting the real Charlie show. It was difficult not to, given the situation. I took a breath to keep from venting my spleen and turned to the detective. He was my second least favorite person at the moment. Boys had managed to knock him off the top spot. Those eggs had been the last in the store thanks to the interruption in power. Good, I said. Let's talk over there. He pointed to a wrought iron bench on the sidewalk, right across from where I'd tackled Boys. I sat down with him, grateful that we were out of earshot of the judge, and turned toward Good. The guy is out of his mind, I said. If he tries to press charges against me for tackling him, I'll lose it. I swear. Huff. I doubt he'll do that, Good said. He'll come around. He's just shaken up. It was a surprising relief that Good believed me. Then again, there were other customers in the grocery store who had to have seen what had happened. The SUV careening toward the judge, me dropping my bags and diving into the road like a mad woman. I let out a breath. You okay? Good asked. I narrowed my eyes. I'm being nice, Good said. I don't trust it, I replied. And, yeah, I'm fine, just annoyed. For heaven's sake, Smith, I'm not out to get you. I'm here because you saved a man's life today, and it's my job to catch the person who tried to take it. I didn't answer. Curse him for being sweet. So how about we talk about it? What did you see? I broke it down for him in clipped sentences. The CUV, the tinted windows, the plates, and Judge Boys staring like he couldn't believe it was happening. He must have a lot of enemies. But enemies who were also the enemy of the escaped prisoner, the driver, and the stranger who had been in the car with them. Can I ask you a question? I frowned at Good, after finishing my tale. He looked up from his notepad, spearing me with a dark-eyed stare, his pen poised above paper. Sure? Did you figure out why there was a stranger in the car with them, Isaiah Redding? He wasn't even from gossip, so what was he doing in town? Good sighed. I would tell you to butt out, but I know you'll just do more damage if I don't tell you anyway. You're a slow learner, Good, but you are learning. Don't try me. He waved the pen under my nose. I pictured snapping it in half and squirting ink all over his white shirt. Good tapped the end of the pen on the pad. We've caught up with the Redding family. Apparently Isaiah was hiking across the county. In winter? Good nodded. Some challenge he saw on one of those video social media apps. You know, the ones where they do those dances and pretend to be video game characters? I cupped a hand to my ear. Hear that? That's Gen Z screaming at how much of a boomer you are. Funny, Good said. But the bottom line is, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. You think that he ran into Waylon, the convict, as he was making his way to the car? I asked. That would make Sally the getaway driver. But then, where was the other prisoner? How had they become separated? Or was that part of the plan? I'm not saying any more than I've already said, Good responded. Look, I don't know who's in that SUV yet, but I'm going to find out. If he didn't figure it out, then I would. The killer, whoever they were, was determined to claim more victims. To my mind, there were a few options to explain their behavior. Either the killer had claimed the lives by design or by accident, which meant we either had a psycho on our hands who wanted to claim as many lives as possible, or that the judge and the ex-con had something in common. There was no way that the killer could have known that Isaiah, the hiker, could have been in that car, which meant the main targets had to be Sally or Waylon, or both of them. Then how does the judge fit into all of this? The answers had to be close. I just had to find them. A text blipped through on my phone. Meet me at the reconnaissance point ASAP. Chapter 8. Our reconnaissance spot was under a live oak tree in the front yard of the Gossip Inn. I found my Gamma underneath it, seated on the bench, holding a leaf that she turned over and over in her hand. I joined her, and Gamma crunched the leaf between her fingertips, looking up at me. What happened? How can you tell? I asked. Gamma raised one silver eyebrow, and I waved away my own question. Gamma was an expert when it came to reading body language, and even if she hadn't been, she knew me well enough to tell that I was shaken up. I told her about the black SUV, and she pulled a face. Pity we can't get anything other than a black SUV. What about make and model? I only caught a glimpse before I tackled boys. But it had a large grille, kind of reminded me of your car, except with slightly thinner headlights, and the insignia for the car had been removed. Ah, Gamma said. So they really didn't want to be found out, but someone will have seen the make and model, or at least have a good guess. I'll ask the grapevine. I nodded. What did you want to meet about? I've been doing some research about the victims and potential suspects who might have been involved, Gamma said, and I found something interesting. What? There are 2 suspects living at the inn. 2 of our guests might have been involved in what happened. How? Why? Because they knew the victims, Gamma said. Barry Coles was accused of the same crime as the 2 prisoners but was never put away. He's staying on the 2nd floor in the Blue Room. My jaw dropped. And he's just here, coincidentally. As we've learned, nothing is a coincidence. Who's the other suspect? Catherine Crane, Gamma said. Young woman, pretty, sweet, and she was Wayland's prison pen pal. I rubbed my hands off on the legs of my jeans, so either of these people could be linked to the crime. Barry sounds highly suspicious. Gamma agreed, but at the same time he was never convicted. So why would he put his freedom at risk now? Why bother murdering an escaped prisoner when the penalty would be so much worse than the payoff? We need to find out if this Barry guy was in contact with either of the prisoners. Do we know anything about the guy still on the run? Just that he went away for the same crime. Name is Jonathan. Now that I think about it, if the 2 prisoners broke out, surely the one who would wind up dead would be Barry rather than the other 2. And how does Sally, the getaway driver, factor into all of this? I needed to sit down and figure it out. With all the names drifting around, I'd already started getting a headache. I'm going to review my camera and perimeter footage for the night of the crime. See if I find anything interesting, Gamma said. Good idea. I'll start making notes when I get back to my apartment. Gamma grabbed my leg. Your apartment? I looked down at where her wizened hand clasped my thigh. Well, yeah, I can't abuse your hospitality forever, and I happen to pay rent for that apartment. Do you have a lot of jobs going on at the moment? Gamma asked. Actually, no, I'm in between. Then I'll pay you to work this one. Georgina, I want you to stay here for a while, Charlotte. Until everything is blown over. I don't want you getting into trouble without me nearby, Gamma said. You doubt me? I don't doubt you, I just think we should stick together, she said. Gamma rose, brushing off the seat of her neat beige slacks. Then it settled. You'll stay for a while, and I'll pay you a fee. Besides, Sunlight loves visiting with Coco and Snowy. I let my grandmother leave. What on earth was she hiding? Once I reached the library, pen and notepad in hand, I navigated to the bookcase and tipped a specific book back. There was a sonorous clack, and the bookcase creaked open, revealing the hidden passage behind it. During Halloween, Gamma would host ghost tours up to the attic, made even creepier by the fact that someone had died in the hidden room. Snowy Purr meowed and darted in on my heels, and Sunlight, ever his rambunctious self, soon followed. Coco Puff considered before jumping up onto one of the velvet green armchairs in the library and settling down. Suit yourself, I murmured, and shut the hidden door. I took the rickety metal staircase into the attic and found it full of sunlight from the many windows and with a few old antique pieces. I sat down in one of them, coughing at the puff of dust, and started writing. The case of the jailbreak. Victims. Waylon Dennis, escaped convict who was a bank robber. Sally Williamson, charged with AG. Assault, knew the prisoners, or at least knew Waylon somehow. Figure out how. She would have been in a woman's correctional facility, not the gossip prison, so it's not likely they could have met in prison. How then? Isaiah Redding, a young man who was a resident of Weston and who had been hiking through gossip as a part of a social media challenge. Good claims he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Ask Gamma to double-check on this. Could Isaiah have been associated with the criminals or the prison break? Cause of death. Way. Vehicle collision resulting in instant death. Suspects. Barry Cole's staying at the inn. He was one of the bank robbers, but he was never arrested or put in prison for his role. More information on the bank job and on this suspect. Question: ascertain alibi. Judge Boys? He was almost knocked over, but it is entirely possible that he had an accomplice who he asked to run him over so that he looks innocent. Could the judge have known about the prison break? But how? Not like he's the warden or a prison guard. Figure this one out. Alibi here too, just in case. Catherine Crane's sweet young girl who was Waylon's pen pal in prison. She's at the inn, but why? Question her and ascertain an alibi. Jonathan, escaped convict. Doubtful that he could have found that SUV or had it waiting so that he could murder his accomplice and the getaway driver. But then, still could be a possibility. Find him and question him. Police believe he's left gossip. Clues. Black SUV with 0 identification markings, no license plates, tinted windows. Tried to kill Judge Boys, allegedly. I tapped the nib of my pen next to what I'd written under clues. What else was there to make note of? It didn't seem like there was much of anything else, other than that Isaiah shouldn't have been with 2 hardened ex-convicts at all. He was a major question mark. But my first course of action was clear. Talk to the would-be victim, and then the suspects. Chapter 9. The following day. Tracking down people in gossip was as easy as asking my grandmother for information, at least when it came to folks who lived in the town. And Judge Boys liked to attract attention. He lived in a fancy double-story home on Cartway Street. That was the biggest out of all the houses in the suburb. A gabled roof, windows in the attic that glared down at the perfectly kept front yard, and beige stone walls made it look like a castle rather than a house. I strode up the front path, past a miniature fountain, and onto the porch. The front door was obscene in its size. I picked up the brass knocker, shaped like a lion's head, and let it fall against the door. There wasn't a doorbell. "Who is it?" Boy's voice came from inside. "I'm armed and willing to use my weapon if you try to break in." "Judge Boys?" I called out. "It's Charlotte Smith. I'm the one who..." The door swung open a crack and Boys gave me a hateful stare. "I remember you. You're the one who sprained my arm." It was that, or you don't have anything to sprain at all. Because he'd have been dead. "What do you want? I've got paperwork to do, and I'm due in the courtroom in an hour." "So plenty of time to talk then," I said, with a smile that probably didn't come across as sweet. But the guy got under my skin. I'd never met a person less grateful to have been saved from certain doom. "Sorry to bother you at home," I said, "but I wanted to talk to you about what happened the other day." "Why? Why?" "You might not know this," I said, "but I specialize in helping people fix their problems." Again, I had to hold back from snapping at him. "I've heard about you. You're the type who likes to meddle." "Sure am," I said. "So I wanted to ask you if you know of anyone who might have wanted to, knock you over with an SUV." Boys sniffed and glanced past me, then back into his house. "You got a recording device on you?" "No, is that a problem?" Did I say it was a problem? Wow. So do you have a minute to talk? Why should I tell you anything? Because I can fix the problem for you, I said. I prefer to rely on the justice system, He started closing the door. I slammed my hand into it, quickly breaking my promise to act sweet and innocent. When the chips were down, I acted without impunity, and that would be my downfall. At least that was what Gamma said. But wouldn't it be nice if people just played along and acted right? "Get your hand off my door," boys barked. "The justice system wasn't there yesterday when you almost got killed," I said. "And they wouldn't be there if you died, because you refused to tell me what I needed to know." Boy's jaw dropped. Are you threatening me?" "No, that was a poor choice of words," I said, mentally cursing myself. "I meant that you should tell me who might want to kill you so that I can stop them before it gets out of hand." Boys licked his lips. "I'm a judge. I've got plenty of enemies." He tried squeezing the door closed another inch, but I held it, slipping my foot into the spot between the edge of the door and the jamb. "Do you have any idea who might have been in that car?" Boys stiffened. "No, and I'm not convinced they were trying to kill me." "You're an intelligent man, Mr. Boys. You saw that SUV barreling toward you. You know how that would have ended, with you plastered all over the front of its grille. So why don't you quit hiding from the truth and tell me what's going on here?" Boys didn't answer me. Why wouldn't he tell me the truth? Had he been threatened? "Did you judge that bank robber case? The one that involved those 2 prisoners who escaped?" "You," Boys said, "have no idea who you're messing with. I suggest you stop asking questions and get your foot off my property before I crush it with the weight of this door." If only I had some truth serum to get this guy to talk. But Gamma was fresh out thanks to the last murder that had taken place at the inn, and we wouldn't have any for a while to come. The stuff was expensive. "Where were you on the night of the murders?" I asked. Boys pressed his lips together tight. "Tell me. I'm here to help, Judge Boys, I promise. I'm just—" "Get off my porch," Boys roared, specks of spittle flying from his lips. I backed up, and Boys slammed the door shut, hard. I wasn't going to get anything else out of this guy, that much was clear, but he was still on my suspect list. Victim or not, the guy didn't want to talk, and that meant he had a reason for it, whether he was being threatened or he was the one who'd committed the crime. I left the judge's castle and got into my Mini Cooper, bringing my phone out to check for messages. 1 missed call. 1 text message from a number I didn't recognize. "Hello, my name is Catherine Crane. I've heard from people in gossip that you can help fix problems. I wanted to ask if you could help me. I would like to hire you. Could we organize a time and date to meet up? Thanks." Interesting. It wasn't often that one of my suspects came to me first. It didn't necessarily mean she was innocent either. I sent off my response with a gnawing sense of unease in my stomach. Chapter 10. Catherine Crane was classically beautiful, pale and tall, with a perfect complexion and raven hair that framed a heart-shaped face. She arranged herself at the wrought iron table under the trees in the Gossip Inn's front yard, taking great care with her fitted woolen dress, leaning forward to check that the chair hadn't caught her at the back. I watched her from near the greenhouse while Charlie, the enthusiastic border collie who lived with the groundskeeper, Quentin, barked and darted back and forth with a case of the zoomies. Catherine checked her watch, then crossed her hands atop one another, waiting patiently for me to arrive. I'd taken this opportunity to observe her, so I could get a measure of her attitude before I arrived and after. Right now she was precise, controlled, even a little irritable. Charlie dashed over to me, and I gave him a few pets before he darted off again, barking at Quentin, who walked across the lawn, carrying a shovel. I waved at him, and he lifted a hand in greeting. Finally, I set off. Catherine looked up at the sound of my approaching footsteps, and her disposition shifted. It was slight, but it was there, from irritable to sorrowful. "Miss Crane?" "That's me," she said, breathing the words out like they weighed her down. "Are you?" "Charlotte Smith," I said, extending a hand. "Nice to meet you." Catherine bobbed her head, and her bottom lip trembled like she was holding back tears. I took a seat across from her, offering her a comforting smile. You didn't give me much information via text. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," she said, then swallowed and brushed her fingers over her lips. "Just a little emotional. I've gotten caught up in something I shouldn't have." I frowned, playing dumb. "Tell me about it." I've done such a silly thing, but I didn't know who else to turn to, Miss Smith. I hope you can help me fix my problem, but I don't hold out much hope." "I'll do what I can." Catherine took the encouragement from me and responded with a heavy sigh. She brushed her fingers against the tip of her nose. I fell in love with a very bad man. Recently, not recently, but about 6 months ago, I started writing letters to a man in prison. His name was Waylon, and he had been wrongfully accused of bank robbery, she said. Wrongfully. That was clearly the line that Waylon had fed her. He wanted to be free, and he was desperate to prove his innocence to me in our letters. Catherine gave a soft smile, looking off into the distance. He cared for me. He asked me questions about myself. He really paid attention to me, and eventually, we fell in love. Catherine turned her gaze to me, expecting judgment. I gestured for her to continue. "We fell in love, but I live in Houston and he was out here, so I never got to meet him in person. We agreed that if he was ever going to be freed, then we'd meet up. About a month ago, Waylon told me that he'd had a parole hearing and that he was going to be released soon. And then last week, he told me to come to gossip and wait for him because he'd be out soon." "And that's why you're here," I said. "Yes. Except he lied to me," Catherine whispered, and rage contorted her face for a millisecond. She looked down. "He lied about being released. He was one of those 2 prisoners who broke out of prison, and then he was killed in a car accident." "I heard about it," I said. "The whole town is talking." "Yeah," Catherine hesitated. "And the police are investigating who might have done this. While I'm angry about Waylon lying to me, I do still care for him. I want his killer to be found." "Sure you do." Suspicious. Her behavior, the way she was talking about it. She had a lot of pent-up rage about what Waylon had done. Didn't blame her for that. But there was another layer. Something insidious about her approach. "The police have questioned me about my presence here and what happened, but I haven't done anything wrong. I just want them to leave me alone so I can go home. I'm mortified that I came out here for a man who lied to me." So, she didn't really want to find who'd hurt her beloved. She wanted to prove her innocence so she could leave. Understandable. But why the rush? If she was innocent, then surely she'd be happy for the cops to investigate her and move on to other suspects. "I understand," I said. "This must be difficult for you." "Exceptionally," Catherine said. "I won't be writing pen pal letters to prisoners ever again. I thought I was doing a good thing by writing to him. I thought it would help give him a mental escape or bring him some joy, but he manipulated me into falling in love with him." "Do you have any of his letters with you?" "I don't see how they'll be relevant to your investigation. They're private." "All right," I replied. "Where were you on the night that Waylon was murdered?" "You don't pull any punches, do you, Miss Smith?" I gave her a bright smile. "That's why I fix people's problems. If I pulled punches, the bad guys would roam free, and without broken jaws." You see, I don't really have an alibi for that night," Catherine said. "I was asleep in my bed, and nobody was there with me." "The power was out that night," I said. "Yes. And there was a big storm. You slept through it?" "I did," she said. "I'm sure that doesn't make me suspicious. I like to sleep with earplugs. I'm very sensitive to loud noises." I nodded. "Do you have a car, Miss Crane?" "A car? No, not here with me." We'd have to prove that, and I needed to talk to Gamma about the cameras. If either of these suspects were the killer, there would at least be evidence that they had left the inn on the night of the murder. "Will you help me prove my innocence?" Catherine asked, and find who killed Waylon?" "I'm willing to take your case," I said, "but it's going to cost you." "Whatever you need." Apart from those pen pal letters. Chapter 11. Later that evening. I sat at the kitchen table, wearing a pair of ski goggles and slicing onions on the chopping board that was my nemesis. Then again, everything involved in the cutting of onions was my enemy. It was my least favorite task, but one I would do for Lauren, especially since she was heavily pregnant and the texture of onions made her gag. She stood on the other side of the kitchen, slicing the baguette for tonight's dinner, French onion soup. It was like I'd been transported back in time to when I'd lived at the inn, and it was a strange feeling. Snowy, Sunlight, and Cocoa Puff were arranged in the hall outside the kitchen door, hoping for scraps of whatever we made. Even though they hardly ever got a treat, unless it was cooked chicken breast, sliced up, they held out hope. "You all right over there, Charlie?" "Fine," I said, "just thinking about everything that's happened." "You mean the accident?" Lauren shivered. "This inn has had too many deaths around it." "What about the ones inside it?" "Don't remind me. I'm sure this place is cursed," Lauren whispered. "I bet the ghosts of those 3 people are going to haunt us." "Not this again. They're not going to haunt us. There's no such thing as ghosts." "I've seen ghosts with my own 2 eyes, Charlie." I nodded. "You thought you saw a ghost, remember? Then it turned out to be a guy hiding in the—" "What on earth are you 2 talking about at a time like this?" Gamma strode into the kitchen. "Ghosts," Lauren said. "Ghosts. It's not Halloween anymore. It's nearly Christmas. Which reminds me, Charlotte, I'm going to need someone to hang the decorations and help me with the tree." I blinked at her from behind the ski goggles, the view hazy. "You know I don't work here, right?" Gamma gave me that steel-melting stare. "Fine." "Good," she said. "I will pay you for it." Maybe my grandmother missed me and just wanted me to join her. Or she's hiding something from you. "I wanted to ask you about the camera footage," I said, "from the night it happened." "I have bad news on that front," Gamma said. "I have footage from 11 p.m. and onward, but nothing before. It appears a surge from the power station, an attempt to restore power knocked my cameras out from the morning up until the evening. I only realized it an hour before you arrived. I managed to restore power by rebooting the system and replacing a few battery packs." "In the storm?" Lauren asked. "You could have slipped and fell." Gamma and I frowned at her. Lauren grimaced. "Sorry," because she knew that we were ex-spies and that Gamma was about as kick-butt as they came. "So you have nothing for the entire day?" "Nothing." "Darn," I continued chopping. "That's not ideal." A rambunctious laugh cut through the silence in the kitchen, and I looked up at my grandmother. She peered around the corner, down the hall, and into the foyer of the inn. "Barry Coles," she murmured. "Now." "Sure is." I whipped off my ski goggles and was assaulted by the pungent scent of chopped onions. My eyes instantly started watering. I rose from my chair and exited into the hallway, Gamma watching on. Barry was near the doors, laughing away on a phone call. I stumbled up the hall toward him and let out a melodramatic sob. Barry frowned, glancing toward me, then shook his head. "Yeah, I'll call you back. Got to go." Another sob racked my body, and I used the pain from the onions to my full advantage. "Hey, honey, are you all right?" Barry asked. "You need help." He pressed a hand to my back. I threw myself into his arms, sobbing dramatically. I. All right. Barry patted me on the back, awkwardly. There. You'll be okay. Come on, let's get you a seat." He guided me toward the library door, opened it, and helped me into one of the comfy velvet armchairs. A fire crackled in the grate, but we were the only ones in the room. Barry hovered nearby, smoothing a hand over his round belly, tilting his head to one side as he considered me. He had tattoos across the backs of his fingers, but I couldn't make out what they said through my teary eyes. "What's going on, honey? Do you need me to call somebody for ya?" I'm scared," I said. "About what?" Barry asked. "Anything I can help you with?" "About how many more onions I have to slice. I think I'm going to be arrested for a crime I didn't commit." "Oh yeah?" Barry's body language shifted incrementally, a slight stiffening. and awareness. I don't know what to do. I didn't actually do anything wrong. My friends stole a car, and I didn't have anything to do with it, but the cops think I did it. They came around asking me questions. Surprised they have the time with everything else going on, Barry murmured. Darn pigs. Look, honey, I know exactly how you're feeling right now, but you can't let it get to you. I looked up at him. You can help me. I don't know about that, he said, but I can give you some solid advice as somebody who was in a similar situation. Barry lowered himself into the chair next to mine and placed a hand on my arm. It wasn't creepy but avuncular, which I appreciated. He could easily have killed the people in that car. Kind didn't equal innocent. Advice? I asked. Yeah, you see, he said, I've been accused of things too. Best thing you can do is go to the cops and offer them information. Get yourself a plea deal. You mean? Snitch, Barry said, patting me on the arm. Snitch your little heart out. You've got to put yourself first in this life. Now, let me see if I can get one of those nice ladies in the kitchen to rustle you up a nice cup of hot cocoa. What do you say? Thanks, I replied. You absolute psycho. So he had been involved in the bank robbery. He'd just gotten away with it because he'd turned on his co-conspirators. But didn't that mean that the escapees would want him dead rather than the other way around? Sure. Barry was already at the door. He peered back at me. You smell like onions, by the way. Might want to take a shower. What I needed was to make note of what I'd discovered and talk to Gamma about it. 3 bank robbers, 1 dead, 1 escaped, 1 that was a snitch. What was Barry doing out here in the first place? Was it an innocent vacation? Gamma didn't believe in coincidences, and she had a point. And who had Barry been talking to on the phone? Chapter 12. Sally doesn't have any living family in town, Gamma said, from the end of my bed. It was late, and she'd bustled into my room a half an hour ago, her hair in curlers, holding a paperback in one hand and a shotgun in the other. She was clearly on edge, though she still wouldn't tell me why. That doesn't help. We need to know how she's connected to the others. Why did she pick up Waylon, and why didn't she pick up the other escapee, Jonathan, too? She was friends with Waylon, Gamma replied. I've been doing some research on the 3 victims. Sally and Waylon were friends on social media. It appears they went to high school together and kept in touch all these years. 2 people cut from the same cloth. Exactly, Gamma said. He must have gotten into contact with her to give him a ride. But why would he do that if he asked Catherine to come out here and wait for him to be released? Might have been his plan to pick her up on the way out of the town, Gamma said. They were right outside the inn, after all. Probably were headed over to pick up Catherine. I need to get my hands on those letters, I muttered. Might be time to do a little unorthodox investigating. Gamma set the shotgun down, leaning it against my dressing table, and sat down, shaking her head. If the cameras had been working. It's too late to worry about that now, I said, and frowned. Gamma wasn't the type to dwell on past mistakes. She kept on moving. Are you okay? She sniffed. What on earth are you talking about, Charlotte? Of course I am. I'm perfectly fine. You're on edge. It's been a difficult week. Gamma put up a smile that wasn't genuine. I hesitated, gathering sunlight in my lap. He meowed at me imperiously and began kneading the blanket on my lap. Are you keeping something from me? Charlotte, Gamma said, I'm an ex-spy. If I was keeping something from you, you surely wouldn't know about it. Fair point. I wanted to argue it, though. Why wouldn't she just? My grandmother's phone blipped in the pocket of her fluffy white robe, and she removed it. It's Mrs. Schickster, she said. Yes, hello, Carol. What do you have for me? The sound of Mrs. Schickster's frantic tone on the other end of the line bled into my quiet room. I tensed up, then forced myself to relax. Is that so? Gamma said. I see, yes. All right, thank you, Carol. I'll make sure the guests are aware. Have a good evening. Yes, we will lock the doors, of course. No need to Gamma size. You too, Carol. Bye now. And then she hung up. What happened? "The town is being shut down again," Gamma said. "The other escapee, Jonathan, was sighted outside the jewelry store on May Street. He's changed his clothes, but it was him. Carol is certain." Darn. I wouldn't be leaving the inn anytime soon. "I have to go shut the doors, Charlotte. I'll return shortly." And then Gamma grabbed her shotgun, pumped it once, and set off. My bedroom door shut with a click. I gently moved Sunlight aside, shaking my head. It wasn't like I could sit idly by at a time like this. They were shutting the town down again. But what did that help? People had to continue about their lives. The entire town would suffer if they tried to keep people sheltering in place indoors. Business had to continue. And what about my clients? If I got another fixer job, it wasn't like I could accept it. People needed help, and I was meant to be the one to provide it to them. I couldn't exactly do that from in here. Frustration bubbled through me, both at how convoluted the case had become and at the shutdown. Barry was a suspect and a snitch. Catherine was too, and now there was this prisoner to contend with as well. I'd checked this afternoon, and Barry didn't have a car. According to Gamma, he'd arrived via a taxi. I gnawed on my bottom lip, then grabbed my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. I hit dial and held the phone to my ear. Smith. Aaron's voice was crisp, even though it was late. He hadn't gone to bed. "I know about the sighting," I said. "Of course you do," Detective Good replied. "That's all I need, you running around town trying to take down ex-convicts in some bid to prove yourself." "I'm not going to do that," I said, though it was entirely possible I might. "Look, I'm calling about the shutdown." "What about it?" "I don't think it's a good idea." Good was silent for a second. "So, let me get this straight. You're telling me how to do my job." I bit back a witty retort about having successfully done his job several times in the past. "I'm not telling you how to do it, I'm strongly advising that you don't shut down the town." "Oh, right, Good said, in that infuriating tone that made me want to punch him and kiss him at the same time. "I'll take that under advisement, Charlotte, thank you. Really, this call has made my entire night. It's not like I haven't had to deal with pushback from every other business owner in this town or anything." "Then maybe you should take their advice." "And maybe you should butt out for once," Good said. "Don't you get it? I'm trying to do what's best for this town." "And I am too. People need to eat. You can't just. People need to stay alive. There is a dangerous criminal on the loose. What do you expect me to do? Let people get shot or stabbed or any other number of things so that people can keep on shopping for groceries? Haven't you heard of Instacart?" "Good, That's enough. Don't call me again unless it's two. To what?" "I don't know, ask me out or something." I blink. "Ask you out?" "Yeah." "What, like on a date?" "You're quick on the uptake." I blow out a breath. "Well, I would love to, Good, but we can't go out because UV shut down the town." The last part came out as a shout and I hung up afterward and threw my phone onto the bed. Sunlight meowed at me. Insufferable man. A notification dinged on my phone and I picked it up. I had a text message. "You want to go out on a date with me? Because I will hold you to that once this is all over." My stomach twisted with a mixture of anger and butterflies, and I threw the phone aside again, refusing to answer his text. Chapter 13. "Is there any reason you're throwing a temper tantrum in here, Charlotte?" Gamma asked. "You'll wake the rest of the guests." Gamma used the butt of her rifle to shut the door, then locked it behind herself. "Just Good," I said, annoying me as usual. "He's keeping the town on lockdown even though it's possibly the most idiotic thing he could do. How are we supposed to survive as a town when he won't let anyone do anything?" "Take a breath, Charlotte," Gamma said, setting the shotgun down. "You're going to pass out. Besides, I have something I need to discuss with you." I sat back down on the bed. Sunlight meowed at me, and I reached out and twined my fingers through his fur, appreciating the sense of calm that it brought me. Gamma was right. I couldn't afford to freak out over Good when we had the case to worry about and the escaped prisoner who'd been sighted in town. The fact that they'd thought he'd run off was another issue entirely. Gamma took a deep breath. I haven't been honest with you. I raised my eyebrows. I thought you would have no trouble keeping things from me. No need to be sassy, Charlotte, Gamma said. I've had a change of heart. I didn't want to talk to you about this. I wanted it to be a surprise, but I had time to think while I was putting the inn under lockdown. I waited for her to continue, stroking Sunlight and enjoying his purrs. I'm going to need your help, she said. 2 heads are better than 1, and I can't expect you to trust me when you know there is something that I'm keeping from you. I nodded. I want to work with you seamlessly because I do trust your spy abilities, even though you might not think it. My grandmother wasn't one for affection or even words of encouragement unless they were absolutely necessary. She was hardened after years of being a spy, and I had witnessed that firsthand as a child. I didn't blame her for it. I had spent most of my life hero-worshipping her and tried to follow in her footsteps as closely as possible. Charlotte, we need to ensure that this case is solved within the week, Gamma said. We have a special guest coming for Christmas who is of the utmost importance. Which guest? I asked, surprised by the direction the conversation had taken. Gamma had been keeping a special guest from me. That was hardly a big secret. Gamma hesitated. Delta Mission, your cousin. My eyes widened. The operative who's on the run, I thought she. I have wanted to know her as my relative for many years now, Gamma said, but it's always been too risky. She had to maintain her cover, and contacting me was inadvisable. But now she's on the run, that somehow makes it better. Was I feeling jealousy? Special Agent in Charge Grant will permit her to bring the food truck through here for Christmas. But he needs honest confirmation from me that the Gossip Inn isn't compromised, she said. From his side, he's secured everything. Everything? Yes, there's no chatter about me, no interest, and none about you either, which means we're in the clear for Delta to visit. Gamma swallowed. Charlie, this might be the only chance we get to meet her. To meet her face to face. To know her. I wanted to fold my arms and shut down. The sound of desperation in her voice was more emotion than I usually experienced from her. But at the same time, I loved my grandmother dearly, and I didn't want to be selfish. I wanted her to have what she wanted. She'd run this inn, she'd built a livelihood for her employees, she saved cats for heaven's sake, and maybe it was all in lieu of paying for whatever ill she had committed during her time as a spy, but I couldn't deny her. My grandmother was a good person, and I needed to be a good one too. I cleared my throat, glancing down at my lap. She knows about us? I asked. About you, me. She knows, Gamma said. She knows, and she's agreed to come and meet us. I have no idea what she will be like, but Charlotte, I'm not infallible. I'm getting on in the years. Unless they invent some form of chemical akin to the fountain of youth, I am going to die one day. Georgina. It's true, it's morbid, but it's true. There are only 2 certain things in life, and that's death and fur balls. You of all people know that. She nodded to Sunlight. I want to meet her. I don't want to have any regrets. I maintained my silence, stroking Sunlight and letting the knowledge of what Gamma wanted settle around my shoulders. I would do just about anything for my grandmother. Take down a cartel, dive in front of her to save her from a bullet, possibly even take a truth serum and spew information about my secret crush on Good, but this. To threaten our lives so that she could meet with this Delta mission. Charlotte? Was I not enough? Was it that she was so disappointed in my spy abilities that she wanted to see if Delta was a better match for what she expected out of a granddaughter? Charlotte. Yes, Georgina, I said, meeting her gaze. I know this has come as a shock to you. I don't want you to agree to help if that's not truly what you want. I'll help you, I said. Not that you ever need my help, truly. I'm just sort of an added extra when it comes to these cases. Don't be ridiculous, Charlotte, Gamma said. There's a reason you're the town's fixer. Yeah, because you don't want to be. There's a vast difference between having the capability to help and wanting to help. Being trusted to help, Gamma said. I have always admired your willingness to trust others. It's a quality I lack. It's what made you a good spy. And a cynical human being. Regardless, Gamma said, brushing her hands off, as if the matter had been settled. We had better get to work. We have a week. And with that, she left my room and shut the door. I lay back in bed for a moment, contemplating our next steps. I would need to take over the cooking at the inn until the darn shutdown was lifted. Good and his wise ideas. And then, well, it was time to do a little hands-on research. Chapter 14. The following morning. I had come to a conclusion while I stirred the scrambled eggs. The only time that the guests wouldn't be in their rooms was during the breakfast service, which meant that one of us had to go upstairs and break into Barry and Catherine's rooms while the other appeased them and kept them busy. Gamma had yet to materialize to help with breakfast, possibly because she'd been up all night poring over case details and information about our suspects and the escapees. My grandmother found it easy to survive on less than 8 hours, whereas I was ready to go back upstairs and drop into a coma. Charlotte, you'll burn the eggs. My head snapped up and I found my grandmother near the coffee pot, pouring herself a cup. When did you come in? Gamma shook her head. Really, Charlotte? With murderers and escaped prisoners on the loose? I'm tired. I can't be switched on all the time, I groused. Besides, it's cook the eggs or protect the country. I gestured with the spatula, splashing a bit of egg onto the floor. You can't have both. Huh. Gamma took a sip of her coffee, then walked to the kitchen doors and peered out of the porthole windows that looked on the Gossip Inn's adorable dining area. She turned to me, keeping her voice low. Do you have any plans? Oh, I told her about my idea. But I want you to be the one who goes upstairs. I'm going to keep Barry and Catherine busy. How? I gave her a sneaky grin. The best way I know how. Don't cause any trouble. But that was exactly my intention. Charlotte Mission wasn't a peacekeeper, and Charlotte Smith was good at stirring the pot without anyone knowing it had been stirred. The eggs, Charlotte. I removed the pan from the heat, noting that it was only metaphorical pots I was good at stirring. The rest of the breakfast prep passed quickly, and by the time the guests had come down, the hum of their chatter drifting through the kitchen doors, I was ready. Gamma handed me a flesh-colored microphone and matching earpiece, and we tested that our comms were clear. Come in, ugly sweater, my grandmother whispered, from where she stood just outside the kitchen, in the passage where Coco, Snowy and Sunlight patiently sat waiting for scraps. Reading you loud and clear, Big G. Don't do anything irresponsible, ugly sweater. I'm not the one about to invade people's privacy, I reminded her. Over and out. I laughed under my breath, then pushed the trolley out into the dining area and started loading the food onto the long table. The plates were already stacked, the glasses and mugs clean and sparkling, a few of them already in use as the guests had poured themselves juice, coffee, or sparkling water. All right, I said, your breakfast is served. Please help yourselves. The guests rose from their tables, murmuring or chatting, all excited to fill their bellies. I spotted Catherine near the back wall, looking pale, and Barry on the phone in line, laughing again, as if he didn't have a care in the world. Barry, the snitch. Catherine, the jilted lover, now my client. Which one would be easier to get to? I grabbed a glass, filled it with apple juice, and walked it over to Catherine. Good morning, Miss Crane. How are you today? Thank you, she said, accepting the glass. That's kind of you. Oh, it's not from me, I said. It was from Barry over there. He mentioned that you were looking under the weather and suggested I give you some sugar. Catherine pursed her lips. Oh! Interesting guy, I said. He seems to think you were involved in the prisoner's escape. A lie, of course, but it was pot-stirring time. Client or not, I had to figure out if she was the actual murderer and if she'd hired me to cover her tracks. It was possible that she'd try to play me. Others had tried in the past, and failed, of course. Catherine had been stunned to silence by my words. He what? Don't get me wrong, I said. It's not like he said that outright, but it's just the way he talked to me about. He thinks that Catherine's mouth flapped open and closed. Are you all right? I asked. But Catherine didn't hear me. She marched across the room toward Barry and clamped a hand down on his arm. You. Barry wrenched free from her grasp, turning toward her and covering the end of his phone. I'm kind of in the middle of something here, sweetheart. Why don't you run along? Sweetheart? Who do you think you're talking to? I have no idea, Barry said. Don't even know your name, hence my instruction for you to run along. I'm in the middle of a conversation here. I know what you've been saying about me, Catherine said. Huh? I heard that you've been telling people Look, lady, I don't even know who you are, and I don't care to know, so why don't you beat it, huh? Before you make me do something I regret, Barry said, with a glint of a smile around his eyes. You can't touch me. I'll call the police. Who said anything about touching you? There are worse things to do then. Ugly sweater, come in, my grandmother's voice sounded in my ear. I repeat, come in. I backed away from the foray and entered the foyer. This is Ugly Sweater. I'm on my way back down. You found something? I didn't even get into the rooms, my grandmother said. I just got an alert on my phone. Someone has breached our defenses. Meet me in the armory now. The guests. They can help themselves to the food. Get to the armory. This is an emergency, Ugly Sweater. Do you read me? A code red? I'm on my way. Chapter 15. My grandmother suited up in silence, and I followed her lead, my gaze fixed on the footage projected above her desk. A man wearing an orange jumpsuit crossing the boundary fence and then creeping off through the woods in the direction of the stream. There was an old shed out there that had history when it came to the Gossip Inn. I couldn't help but wonder whether he'd gone in that direction. We had to catch him before he disappeared. The escaped prisoner, Jonathan, had stumbled into the wrong territory. Catching him would mean lifting the town shutdown. It would mean another lead that might help us solve the hit and run murder. It can't be him, I said. He doesn't have a car. The more important question, Charlotte, is why is he here in the first place? Why come here, to this inn? If the rendezvous point for their escape plan was near the inn, why return to the scene of the crime? To hide in plain sight? Gamma pursed her lips in a way that said she didn't agree. I think there's more to this than meets the eye. Ready? I nodded, adjusting the Kevlar compound that made up the top portion of my sleek black fitted suit. My grandmother had had them designed for us specially, bullet, fire, and knife resistant. They were our best defense in a fight, and we didn't know what to expect from our run-in with Jonathan. Other than the fact that he had been given a life sentence when he'd murdered someone in prison. I followed Gamma out of the armory and through the woods that encircled the back of the inn. We moved toward the river, keeping quiet. Gamma used gestures and nods to direct us, and we wound up near the riverbank, after following a set of muddy footprints, to find the prisoner drinking from the creek. My grandmother gave me the signal, and I unlatched my trap gun from my belt. I raised it and fired a weighted net from the end. It hit Jonathan in the back and set him sprawling face first into the water. He let out a horrified yell and tried to struggle, but the net's mesh was made of steel, and the more he struggled, the more it would tighten. A fact he soon became aware of, judging by how still he became. Gamma walked over to him and stood behind him. She removed a device from her utility belt and pressed a small black patch to her throat. She tapped it once. Jonathan. The voice that came out of my grandmother sounded like a man's. Who are you? Let me go. Give us the information we need, or we will report you to the cops. You can go back where you came from if you don't talk. The prisoner stilled. What are you doing here? Gamma asked. Ain't telling you nothing. Jonathan spat. Gamma placed her boot on the back of his head. She dipped his face into the mud and held it there for a second before releasing him. The prisoner sputtered and gasped, and I raised an eyebrow at my grandmother. She wasn't usually this unorthodox in her questioning methods. Gamma gave me a tight-lipped look. "What are you doing here?" she repeated, threatening with her boot again, holding his head just above the mud. "I came to meet someone." "Who?" The guy spat mud. "A person. A woman." "Which woman?" "Her name is Catherine Crane," he said, singing like a canary. "She was meant to be our way out of here. She was meant to be your way out? Who?" Gamma asked. "You and the other prisoner? The one who's dead?" "Yeah, she was our getaway," he said. "So you came back here to find her," Gamma sounded sure. "To make your escape after the heat cooled off after what happened. Did you kill them? The others?" "No," he said. "Can't say I didn't think about it, but no, I didn't. Don't even have a car, do I?" "You seem to know an awful lot about what happened for a person who's been on the run," Gamma said. "Yeah, well, it pays to pay attention to the news when your face is all over it, don't it?" He had a point. But could we trust what he was saying was true? "Tell me about Barry," Gamma said. The prisoner went quiet. Gamma's boot came down a little, and he grunted. "What about him?" He snitched and ran. "What do I care what he does with his life?" "You don't want him dead?" Gamma asked. Another moment of quiet. "I don't want nothing to do with him," he said. "And I don't know where he is. Just want to be free. Look, I've answered all of your questions. Now let me go. I didn't deserve what I got." "I didn't." Gamma removed a device from her belt, bent over and stuck a needle in Jonathan's neck. He passed out, flopping face first into the mud with a visceral squelch. Gamma removed her boot from his neck. I came forward and removed the net, then turned him onto his side so he could breathe easily and checked his nasal passages and throat was clear. Gamma removed the device from her throat that had changed her voice, drawing her phone from her pocket. "You'd better get back, Charlotte. Change your clothes, ensure that the guests haven't destroyed the inn in your absence, and then start cleaning up. I'll be with you momentarily." She gestured to the phone. "What are you going to tell them?" "That we noticed him crossing the boundary, and we found him unconscious near the riverbank." I nodded. "How long will he be out for?" I didn't want to leave her alone in case he woke up. The last thing we needed was him realizing our true identities. "An hour at the least." "I'll be fine," Gamma said. "Go, Charlotte, quickly now." Probably a good idea, given I'd left Barry and Catherine about to have a food fight. Chapter 16. The cleanup had taken an hour, and I rested my head against the fridge, inhaling through my nose and trying to clear my head. The cats hung around outside the kitchen doorway, waiting for me to do something. Sunlight was in a far better mood now that he was settled down with the other cats, which only made me feel guilty. The lockdown would lift thanks to our capture of the prisoner, and that meant that I'd be taking Sunlight home. Or I should be. I wasn't sure how close Gamma wanted me to stay for the arrival of this Delta mission woman. I shook my head at the pang of jealousy that assaulted me. "Don't be dumb. She's just a spy, and she's family. She'll probably be nice." I wasn't going to read too much into it. I was just glad that Catherine and Barry hadn't come to blows, and that I'd returned to a room of people eating their food happily, without Catherine. Apparently she'd stormed off upstairs in a huff after the altercation. "Smith." "When?" I jerked around and found Detective Good standing in the doorway between the cats. Sunlight, the traitor, wound between his legs. What was it with this guy and sneaking up on me, and how was he managing to catch me with my guard down over and over again? I was out of practice, sure, but this was ridiculous. "What do you want, Good?" "To talk to you." "We've taken the prisoner into custody," he said. I nodded. My grandmother mentioned she saw him on her cameras. "And you didn't see anything?" I gestured to the now spotless kitchen. "I've been busy all morning, if you couldn't tell. You see, usually Lauren Harris, our chef, is in here running the show. But now I've had to take over even though I'm not a great cook or server. Georgina doesn't have other servers? Oh, she does, I said. It's just that they couldn't come into work because you shut down the whole darn town. We talked about this, remember? I screamed. You listened and denied wrongdoing in the most annoying way possible. I remember you asking me out on a date. He smirked at me. I did not ask you out on a date, I said. You did. I wasn't saying no, by the way, he replied. You know I'm interested. I always have been. His blunt approach set my heart racing. I preferred a man who knew how to navigate the world without fear. Also, men with plenty of red flags, judging by my ex-husband who'd gone rogue and hunted me down with the aim of murdering me. I'm lifting the town lockdown, he said, so you won't have to help in the kitchen here anymore. That's not why you're lifting it. No, he said, I'm just mentioning the happy side effect. I'm hoping it means you won't scream at me anymore. Stop doing dumb things and I won't have to. Aaron entered the kitchen and strode toward me. This is a no civilian zone, I growled. Good thing I'm not a civilian. And then he swept me into his arms and planted a kiss on my lips. It was like being electrified, and a wave of honest-to-goodness heat swept over me from the tips of my toes to the top of my head. I wasn't a woman who swooned easily, but the kiss was just right, and when he stepped back, my knees trembled. Only good way to keep you from yelling, he said. What did you do that for? Dunno. Seemed like a good idea. You, I pointed a finger at him, are the most unconscionable most. He grabbed my finger and pulled me into another quick kiss. Go out with me. I'm tired of dancing around our attraction to each other. We both deserve some time off from everything. I swallowed. It could only lead to pain. I would never be able to tell Good who I was without endangering him and myself, and he would never understand. It didn't matter that I found him attractive, that butterflies danced around my stomach when he was around, that he was handsome and kind, but the right amount of blunt and manly. Please, Charlotte, he murmured, holding my hand in his. Don't make me beg for a date. I was stunned. Legitimately stunned. The reasons why not to go out with him ran through my mind. I would never be able to tell him the truth about myself. I didn't want to start a relationship based on lies, and my job would ultimately compromise his. It also wasn't safe for him to be affiliated with me romantically, and it never would be. I was a risk, a threat, a liar. I gnawed on the inside of my cheek, torn, because Good he was a gorgeous, strong, caring, and smart man. He was the type of man that came along once in a woman's lifetime. He lifted my hand and pressed his lips to the backs of my knuckles. I want to see where this goes. I opened my mouth, not even sure what I was about to say next. Just think about it, he said. Text me. Call me. Do something, Charlotte. I know you're the type of person who doesn't hold back. Gamma appeared in the kitchen doorway. Detective Good, she said. I didn't expect you to hang back for quite this long. Good gave my hand one more squeeze before taking a step back. I was just saying goodnight to Miss Smith. Have a good evening, Georgina. And you as well, Detective. Gamma nodded to him as he walked off. She kept her expression placid until the front doors of the inn creaked shut. Charlotte. I don't want to talk about it. Gamma pursed her lips, then sighed. Fine, she said, but you can't spend the rest of your life afraid to live it because of your past. Georgina? Catherine Crane, she said, effectively changing the subject, is now our most likely suspect. As it happens, she did rent a car when she arrived in Gossip. Gamma held up a paper, a printout from her armory, no doubt. From Gossip Auto Rentals. What say we pay them a visit in the morning? Chapter 17. The following morning? Gossip Auto Rentals was situated near the bus stop in town and was a small business with a fleet of 10 cars and a brick building attached to the lot where they were parked. I parked the green Mini Cooper that had once been my grandmother's out front, then glanced over at her in the passenger seat. Gamma's face was lined with tension. The closer we drew to the end of the week, the more stressed she became. I said, Grandpa can find out everything that's happened on his own. Grandpa was our code name for Grant. I'm aware of that, Charlotte, Gamma said. But there have to be no current threats to the Inn or Delta's cover. A past threat is a different story. He won't restrict her from coming here unless there's an ongoing, oh, I don't know, prison break and hunt for murderers? The town is going to be in the spotlight if we don't figure this out. The last thing we need is FBI agents descending and... I reached over and squeezed her hand. It's all right, Georgina. It's going to be all right. Gamma's bottom lip tremored, then stiffened a rare show of emotion for her. Thank you, Charlotte. I felt bad for upsetting her with my question, but I wanted answers as much as she did. Answers about Delta, about why she was on the run. So I said, I heard that there's a vigil for the victims tomorrow. At the Gossip Park, Gamma said. Yes, I heard about that as well. We're going to have to attend. Human behavior tells me that this killer, whoever they are, would likely enjoy attending a vigil for their victims. Like a sense of power and control? Precisely. Now that the town was up and running again, people finally had time to gather. While the escaped prisoner might not have been the best guy around, nor was Sally, his accomplice, well liked, the third victim had family in the county. The people of Gossip cared, and they thought it was the right thing to do. Gamma and I headed into the car rental place and found a particularly annoyed-looking young woman behind the reception desk. No, she said, I can't help you with that. If you want, no. She swung her gaze toward us and held up a hand. Yes, she cut off and frowned at the phone. Well, just hang up on me, why don't you? She took a deep breath, then turned to us. Welcome to Gossip Auto Rentals. How may I help you today? We're here to ask you about a rental, I said. You and everybody else, honey, the receptionist said and ruffled her hair as the phone started ringing again. I've never had this many calls in one day. She took the phone off the hook, rolling her eyes heavenward. Georgina, my grandmother said, with a broad smile, and extended a hand. And this is Charlotte, my friend. Georgina? Oh, of course, from the Gossip Inn. Well, hi there, honey, how are you today? We're finally having some sunny weather again, can you believe it? My name's Dana. She shook Gamma's hand, then nodded toward me. Much better than the storms, Gamma said. I'm relieved that the lockdown has been lifted. Ooh, yeah, that must be terrible for business for you. She lifted a finger, then picked up the phone receiver. Just a second, please, she said into the phone, and then turned back to my grandmother. Turns out, now that it's lifted, everybody and their cousin wants to come out to gossip to find out what happened. They do? Oh yeah, Dana said. You know, those internet sleuths who like to think they can solve what really happened. Those kinds of people, there are all kinds of weirdos out there. Much like us. I didn't say anything, allowing my grandmother to take the lead. She was more experienced than me, and she was a fundamental part of the town at this point, as a business owner and respected member of the community. Gamma gave her an understanding nod. It's been a turbulent time, she said. People are intrigued, confused. Doesn't mean they have to make it my problem, Dana said. But then again, I'm just doing my job. What can I help you ladies with this morning? I have a guest that's staying at the Gossip Inn who's feeling a little under the weather, Gamma said. She's not sure when she'll be able to return the car she rented from your company, so she asked if we could handle the conversation on her behalf. She doesn't have a phone to call? Oh, she has, Gamma said smoothly. But she's lost her voice. Terrible cold going around at the moment. Most unfortunate. And we were out and about, so we thought we might as well stop in. She rented a vehicle and she can't return it? Not on time, Gamma said. Those were her words. And her name? Catherine Crane, Gamma said. Just a second. Dana typed away on her keyboard, then leaned in and studied the results she'd pulled up. That's weird. What is? Gamma asked. I have a record of her putting a deposit down for a car, she said. A black Hyundai Tucson. Ah, we had her, right? But she never came to collect it, Dana said. She didn't? Gamma frowned. That's so strange. The way she talked to us this morning, perhaps she's a bit out of it because of her cold. Must be. Did anyone else rent out an SUV recently? Gamma asked. Dana hesitated, then shrugged. Well, sure, we have a couple of them. Judge Boys rented one, a Hyundai Tucson. I kept my reaction to the news under wraps, but inside I was on fire. This was either a crazy coincidence or we'd just found our killer. Had Boys hired someone to trample him or pretend to? That had to be the answer, unless there was another explanation for this. When did he collect it? Gamma asked. Oh, a couple of days ago. So after what had happened, but why would he need to? The realization hit me fast. Judge Boys would need a new car if he'd rammed his real one into the prisoner's escape car on the night of the murder. Because his car would have been wrecked. Gamma thanked Dana for her time, and we exited the rental building and got back into the Mini. I turned to my grandmother. What do you think? The judge did it. We'll have to consider the facts carefully. What motive would the judge have for committing the crime? Fear that they would come after him? He was the one who put them away, right? So he'd be concerned that. But to risk his life, his career, over 2 convicts, how did he know that they were escaping? Was he in contact with them? Gamma tapped her fingers in her lap. It doesn't quite make sense, Charlotte, but I believe we're getting closer. Because Catherine Crane did not rent out that vehicle. Which means she didn't have a car to hit the victims with. Perhaps she had second thoughts about helping them escape and communicated that to Waylon. And Waylon didn't tell his buddy Jonathan? The other escapee? Gamma considered it. It might be that they fell out, or that Waylon planned on betraying him. Whatever the case may be, we have 2 main suspects left in this. The howl of sirens cut across her words, and we both turned in our seats and peered out of the back window of the Mini Cooper. Several ambulances and police cars streamed past the rental lot. What on earth? I muttered. We'd better find out what's going on. We might have another victim on our hands. Chapter 18. We couldn't get close enough to the crime scene to see what had happened, but most of Main Street had been blocked off. An ambulance was parked across the street, several police cars ahead of it, and officers were gathered there, keeping people back or talking to each other. What on earth is going on? Gamma asked. There's no tape. Hopefully that meant that no one had died. Another hit and run. We hurried toward the line of officers, but none of them paid us any attention. I spotted Debbie, who was a member of the town council and always in the know, standing off to one side with her frenemy, Jane. The pair had a push-pull friendship, but right now they huddled together, gossiping. Jane wore her usual luridly bright eyeshadow, while Debbie stood wearing her sensible walking shoes, grasping a cane in one hand and staring around like she was ready to whack someone over the head with it. I waved at her, and Gamma and I went over to join them on the sidewalk. Georgina, Charlotte, Debbie said. Good to see you ladies. It's been a while. Things are getting darn crazy around here. Do we know what's going on? Gamma asked. We saw the ambulance come screaming by while we were out running errands. It's that car killer, Jane said, conspiratorially. He struck again. Debbie tapped the end of her cane on the sidewalk. But he didn't manage to kill him this time. Who? I asked, frowning. The victim, of course. Jane blinked at us, her eyelashes sprinkled with pink eyeshadow. Yeah, but who was the victim? I looked between the two of them. It's a darn shame. Tap, 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 went the end of the cane. Glad he's not dead, but what a darn shame. Can't help but think it's intentional, Jane said. Well, it's definitely intentional. Knocking down the darn detective who's investigating the murder? Debbie paused. Doesn't get more intentional than that. Wait, what? I grasped Debbie's arm, stopping the consistent tap of that cane. What? Who? Detective Good, Debbie said. He irritates the heck out of me most days, but... Good was hit? I asked. Good? Cold flooded me. That's what I said, Debbie replied. Terrible darn. I turned and strode away from her, toward the line of vehicles, just as the ambulance sirens started up again. One of the officers held out a hand to me. Officer Ronson, dark, tall as a tree, and one of the oldest officers in gossip. Hold up there. You can't go any further. Let me through, Ronson. No can do. There's been a hit-and-run incident, and we're asking all gossipers to stay back. That includes you. Good was hit? I asked him, peering past as the ambulance started off down the road. Good? Yeah. I took a step forward, but he placed a hand on my shoulder. Look, I know you've got a reputation around town. I know you like to fix things. But you can't get past me, all right? It's not happening. We've got a scene to. Is he okay? I asked, my voice sounding as if it wasn't my own. It felt as if I was completely disconnected from my body. Is he? He got hit by a car, Ronson said, but his tone went soft. He's alive. If that's what you're asking. The ambulance disappeared, but my anxiety remained. I strode off toward the Mini Cooper, my insides twisting in on themselves. This couldn't really be happening. This wasn't real, was it? Good hurt? How bad was it? Was he okay? Charlotte. I got into the Mini and put on my seatbelt. Charlotte. A car door slammed. Charlotte, look at me. Charlotte. I found my grandmother in the passenger seat. She reached for me and took my hand, interlacing her fingers through mine. A memory of her doing that when I was a little girl came back to me one of the times she had taken me for a walk to get ice cream. I looked down at her hand, then up at her face. He's going to be fine, she said. Panicking about it won't solve anything. I have to see him. I doubt they'll let you, Charlotte. Gamma's tone was understanding. But if you want to go to the hospital, then let's go. As per usual, my grandmother had been right. I wasn't allowed to see Good or to go near his hospital room, and besides that, there were police at the hospital, ensuring that whoever had done this couldn't finish the job. I'd returned to the Gossip Inn, my grandmother driving the Mini, because I wasn't in the correct frame of mind, and set myself up in the kitchen with my notepad in front of me. Lauren swept past the table, preparing delicious treats for the midday snack, while Gamma had gone to the armory to continue the investigation. Time was running out. I have onions for you to chop if you need to keep your hands busy, Charlie, Lauren said. I have to think, I replied. Someone had tried to kill Aaron. Someone had actually tried to kill Aaron, right after he'd practically begged me for a date and I hadn't given him an answer, because I'd been too afraid of keeping secrets. Too afraid of him getting hurt. And now he was hurt, anyway. I swallowed and focused on the notes instead. I'd crossed out Catherine Crane as a suspect, my focus now on Barry and Judge Boys thanks to his rental of the Hyundai Tucson. But could he have removed the insignia of the car? Were the Tucson's windows tinted? Suspects. Barry Cole's staying at the inn. He was one of the bank robbers, but he was never arrested or put in prison for his role. More information on the bank job and on this suspect. Question: ascertain alibi. Judge Boys? He was almost knocked over, but it is entirely possible that he had an accomplice who he asked to run him over so that he looks innocent. Could the judge have known about the prison break? But how? Not like he's the warden or a prison guard. Figure this one out. Alibi here too, just in case. Catherine Crane's sweet young girl who was Waylon's pen pal in prison. She's at the inn, but why? Question her and ascertain an alibi. Jonathan escaped convict. Doubtful that he could have found the SUV or had it waiting so that he could murder his accomplice and the getaway driver. But then, still could be a possibility. Find him and question him. Police believe he's left gossip. Clues? Capte. Black SUV with 0 identification markings, no license plates, tinted windows. Tried to kill Judge Boys, allegedly. Judge Boys rented out a Hyundai Tucson Black. Judge Boys won't talk to me. Will he talk to Georgina? Most likely that Boys had an accomplice. What about Barry? Did he have a car that he might have been using? Barry is suspicious because he was the snitch. Boys worked their case. I stared at the words on the page, but my mind couldn't catch up with what I'd written down. I needed to make sense of this before the week was through, and before the killer decided to finish what he'd started with Aaron. But the pieces of the puzzle were scattered. Where had Barry gotten a car? He didn't have one he used at the inn. And how was Judge Boys involved? Chapter 19. I'd stayed up all night trying to piece the puzzle together, but I couldn't will it to make sense without more evidence. And there was the small problem of constant nightmares, and the fact that I kept worrying about Aaron. Look alive, Charlotte. My grandmother poked me in the ribs. We have to put our best foot forward today. She was right. If I didn't get it together, I might miss a clue that could lead to us solving this case. I checked my reflection in the mirror in the Gossip Inn's foyer, turning this way and that, and lamenting the streaks of white fur that Snowy, the inn's cat, had left all over my black outfit for the vigil. I picked off a few of them, then followed my grandmother out of the door. The rest of the inn was entirely quiet. All the guests for this week had either checked out or had made it known they would be at the vigil this morning. Breakfast had been silent, much to Lauren's irritation. She loved it when people ate heartily, and frequently seeing people enjoy her food brought her joy. But that meant I'd had plenty of time to reflect on last night and how impotent I was as an investigative force. Come on then. Gamma patted my cheek. You don't usually touch me this often. That is the strangest thing you've ever said, Charlotte. You're trying to comfort me, I said. I know it, but you don't have to do that. But Gamma gave me a knowing look, then clicked her fingers and pointed toward the open doors. We piled into the Mini Cooper together, Gamma behind the wheel this time, and took the long drive to the Gossip Park, where the vigil for the 3 victims would be held. The morning sunlight was watery, and I stared out of the windshield. Charlotte, Gamma said, if you can't do this. I can do it, I said. I'm fine. Fine, Gamma replied. Fine is not good enough, and you know that, Charlotte. I need you to perform at your peak capacity. I know. My teeth ground together, and I turned my head, trying not to let this get to me. First, Gamma wanted to have another family member at the inn. Now Aaron was in hospital, and I was the idiot who'd never given him a chance. My life, since leaving the NSIB, had been in limbo. Then again, my life as an agent hadn't been that much better. The park was packed with gossipers all dressed in black, many of them carrying candles in cups or flowers. There were several people gathered around a small podium in the center of the park, with others still drifting around talking in muted voices that created a hum in the crisp morning air. It was nearly Christmas, and this was how gossipers had to spend their time. It made my blood boil. The fact that the prison break had happened. That there was a killer on the loose, terrorizing our town. This SUV. Why would the judge have wanted the prisoners dead? What was his investment in their deaths? And what about Barry? Why was he hanging around in gossip in a great mood, talking about how he'd snitched on the prisoners? A woman stepped onto the stage and grasped the microphone like it was the only thing keeping her anchored. Thank you for coming out today, everyone. Now, this is a vigil for all the victims, but I want y'all to know that I am Isaiah Redding's mother. I wasn't going to come here today. We had a funeral of our own for my son. She paused to gather herself. But I wanted to be here to say that Isaiah was a good man. He didn't deserve what happened to him. He was. Just in the wrong place at the wrong time. He lived his life to the fullest, and Sirens wailed, and heads turned. Squad cars streamed around the corner and pulled up in front of the park entrance. Officers leaped out and ran toward the entrance, and movement nearby caught my eye. Catherine, who'd come to the vigil in a sleek black dress, kicked off her heels and started a mad dash through the park. The officers sprinted after her, yelling for her to stop, and another one emerged from a squad car with a dog on the end of a leash. Stop running. Stop. We'll release the dog. You want the dog? Gamma's hand clutched my arm. Charlotte, they're wrong. Yeah. Because they had to be wrong. Catherine couldn't possibly have been driving an SUV she didn't have in her possession. And the officers would know that since they would have talked to the prisoner we'd handed over. So why arrest her? Something's wrong. I muttered, then turned to her. Cops don't arrest people unless they have a reason. Well, they haven't quite arrested her yet, Gamma observed. Catherine was on a mad dash through the park, her skinny arms pumping back and forth as she made her bid for escape. An officer darted out of the trees at the opposite end of the park, coming from the northern entrance, and leaped toward her. He collided with her and sent her, screaming, onto the grass. A series of oofs went up from the crowd. That was short-lived, Gamma said. Charlotte, we'd better go. Go? Cow? Yes, we're going to split up. There are 2 suspects left on our list and something isn't adding up. You proceed back to the inn and find Barry. Investigate his room if need be. She removed her ring of keys from her purse and handed them to me. I'll go see Judge Boys, or rather his home. She tapped her throat. Reading me? I tapped my throat. Loud and clear, I said. Are you sure you want to go see the judge? And not Barry? I'm sure, Charlotte. I'll go on foot. You head back to the inn in the Mini Cooper, Gamma said. We have our strengths and yours lie with breaking and entering, whereas mine. Interrogation? Precisely. Brah. Together we strode out of the park, past shocked gossipers holding their candles upside down or staring, slack-jawed. Catherine shrieked loudly, releasing expletives. I haven't done anything. I haven't. I bid Gamma farewell, then got back into the Mini Cooper and started the drive back home. For the first time since Aaron had been attacked, I felt useful. I couldn't go see him in the hospital, but at least I could figure out who'd tried to do this. But why Catherine? What did they have on her? I pulled up outside the gossip inn and entered it, greeted by a few meows and purrs from Sunlight, who rubbed up against my calves. A creak from upstairs, followed by the bang of a door, sent a streak of apprehension through me. Someone was here. Chapter 20. Stay here, I breathed. Sunlight, ever the intuitive cat, didn't meow in response but seated his furry ginger butt on the carpet in the foyer. Everyone had left this morning. Everyone. So who was upstairs and why were they here? I started up the stairs, keeping to the wall and stepping carefully, avoiding the squeaky spots. I reached the 2nd floor, listening hard over the rush of blood in my ears. Another thump came from down the hall. The noise had come from the blue room. Barry's room. Coco Puff sat on an antique chair across from the door, watching with great interest and occasionally flicking his tail. He gave me a long-suffering cat look that said, "You should have been here a half an hour ago." "Come in, Big G," I murmured. "Reading you, ugly sweater." "It appears the target is in the nest." "I'm approaching target number 2's home as we speak," Gamma replied. "Keep me updated. Do not attack unless absolutely necessary." "Copy that." "Copy that. Big G, out." I stopped in front of the blue room, my hand on the gun in the holster beneath my jacket, just in case. I wouldn't shoot Barry. That would only cause more trouble for the inn. A muffled thump came from within. The sound of the bathroom door closing was my guess, followed by footsteps. "Yeah, well, I can't just up and leave now, can I?" A silence. "It wasn't suspicious. I don't agree with that, even a little bit, boys." Well, 2 suspects in contact. If they've arrested her, that means we're in the clear. I'm going to get the heck out of this. No, I can't do that. A breath. Fine, but if this ends badly, it's going to be your fault. Footsteps drew closer to the door, and I darted off, slipping into a bathroom to hide. I peered at the blue room from my hiding spot, just as Barry emerged from within. He held the phone to his ear. "Listen, I don't know if I like this." He shifted awkwardly, listening to the judge on the other end of the call. Finally, he hung up with a grunt and started toward the stairs. Whatever was going on between them, it wasn't above board, and I'd have bet my last bullet that they were up to something nefarious. Were they responsible for what had happened? I waited until Barry was downstairs before slipping out of the bathroom. "Come in, Big G. The target is moving out. Heading toward your current location. Target 1 and 2 are in cahoots." "Is that your professional opinion, ugly sweater?" "Cahoots?" "Correct. Over." I tiptoed down the stairs, moving like a shadow and checking corners, my hand on my gun. Barry was nowhere to be seen. I peeked out of the front windows and found him walking down the front path toward the exit, fists swishing back and forth at his sides. The man was angry. The man was, potentially, a killer. And a seriously crazy plan hatched in my mind. I left the inn and got into the Mini, then started the engine and drove up to the suspect. I rolled down the window on the passenger side with a click of the button. "Hi there," I said. "Hello." Barry's greeting ended in an invisible question mark. "Do you need a ride? I'm heading out to the vigil." I gave a shaky laugh and checked my watch. "I'm totally late." "Ugly sweater, what in the blazes do you think you're doing?" Gamma spoke in my ear. "Have you lost your senses? You cannot invite the target into your car." "I wasn't going to the vigil," Barry said. "That's all right," I replied. "Happy to give you a ride anyway. Where are you headed?" "You don't know where I'm headed, yet you want to give me a ride?" Barry asked. "Ugly sweater, he makes an excellent point." "Sure, I do," I said. "That's what we call Southern hospitality. Besides, I'm only repaying the favor. You gave me some great advice the other day. Really helped me out when I was in a tight spot, man. I'm so grateful." Barry finally got into the car, filling it with cheap cologne and an air of unease. "All right, Cartway Street, you know where that big wig judge lives?" I gave him a bright smile. "Don't know, unfortunately. You got a number?" 215. "All right, then, let's go." The drive started in silence, the Mini rattling on the dirt road until we hit tar. Barry fiddled on his phone, his fingers stabbing and swiping across the screen. "You don't have a car?" I asked. "Nope." "Why not?" "Just visiting. Don't need a car. I like to walk." Somebody didn't want to have a conversation. That was too bad for him. "Ugly sweater, this has to be the most hair-brained scheme you've ever come up with." I turned off into Main Street, taking the long route toward the judge's house. "So, you and the judge are buddies?" Barry narrowed his eyes. "What's that matter?" "Just making conversation," I said. "I always thought of him as a kind of, well, he's not the nicest guy around." "Ugly sweater, I am currently in the judge's home. He's on the porch. I have located his private study and will update you on what I find." The words copy that were on the tip of my tongue, but I forced myself to keep smiling as I directed the Mini into another side street. Barry hadn't commented about my assessment of the judge. I heard the judge likes to lock people away for years when they haven't done anything wrong. Likes to keep to himself, which is kind of weird, you know? Small towns like gossip, people like to get to know their neighbors, much to my everlasting chagrin. Barry stared at his phone screen, his thumb hovering over it, the sides of his neck red. "Ugly sweater, I have found a large amount of money in a duffel bag in the judge's study, hidden underneath the floorboards." Gamma's voice was soft and rushed. A puzzle piece clicked into place in my mind. The judge had been in on the bank robbery. Barry had to be his partner, hence the plea deal. Had the other prisoners known this? Had the judge and Barry been afraid that they would come after them for the cash? Then this UV incident with Boys was to throw the cops off his scent. I turned onto Cartway. Judge Boys stood on his porch, phone in hand. "Ah, looks like he's waiting for you," I said. "Nice place this, right? I mean, how on earth does a judge afford such a nice place on a salary like that? Have you ever wondered?" "No." Barry's response was harsh, grating. "I wonder what kind of car he drives," I said idly. "Don't know." "You don't have a car, but he probably does." "Just." "Stop talking," Barry said. I gave him a lunatic smile. "I think I'd like to know, Barry, what type of car the judge drives, wouldn't you?" "What are you?" And then I pressed my foot flat against the gas pedal and careened up the judge's driveway and toward the shuttered garage door. "Ugly sweater, don't do it, don't do." Gamma's words were cut out by the crash and squeal of metal on metal. An airbag deployed, my vision went white and then black. Chapter 21. I gasped and struggled awake. Pain sprouted in my face and neck, and I turned, searching for Barry. He was in the passenger seat beside me, unconscious. I unclipped my seatbelt, then reached over, wincing at the pain, and pressed my fingers to his throat. Alive. He was alive. Which meant the cops could get here and arrest him. I opened my car door and scrambled out onto the concrete, rising to study the damage. The front of my Mini Cooper was wedged into the crumpled metal of the garage door, and beyond that, a black SUV, the Hyundai Tucson, the insignia removed and the front grille buckled. Whether that was from the impact with Aaron or not, I wasn't sure. I moved toward the door and bent, checking inside for more evidence. My eyes widened. There was a second car inside another SUV. I scrambled under the ruined garage door and approached it. It had a sticker on the right side of the windshield that read Weston Auto Rentals. Another rental. Of course. We hadn't considered the fact that the judge might have rented the first car. But then, of course, he had. It was the only thing that made sense. He'd wrecked the first one, never returned it, then rented the second. Shouting drew my attention back to the problem at hand. Boys was out there. I ducked out of the garage again, my hand moving to my jacket, but it was already too late. Gamma had brought down Boys with a strike to the back of the head. He lay face down on the porch. Sirens wailed close by. "Get out of here, Big G," I said. "You don't need your cover compromised." Ugly sweater. "Just go. I'm the town fixer. They'll expect this type of thing from me." I hurried over to the car and unclipped Barry. I dragged him out of it, struggling with his extra weight. By the time I looked up, Gamma was gone, and the cops had arrived on the scene. "So wait, explain this to me again," Officer Ronson said, scratching his temple. "You crashed your car into the front of the garage accidentally, and then..." "And then," I said, for once missing Good's questioning, "I got out and realized that the SUV that had been attacking people was in the garage. It was at that point that I detained Boys." "Yeah, but that's not what he's saying." I pushed back in the chair in the Gossip Police Department's interrogation room. "He did get knocked over the head," I said. "Maybe he's having trouble piecing together what happened." "Miss Smith," Officer Ronson said, "it's not like you have a great history with sticking within the bounds of the law." "Thanks. So forgive me for being dubious about your story. I have an eyewitness across the street who swears they saw someone else there." "They must be mistaken," I replied. He crossed his arms and watched me, waiting for me to talk. I let him stew, folding my arms as well, and leaning in so that I was invading his space rather than the other way around. "Arrest me if you want. I acted in a way I thought would benefit this town. There's been a maniac on the loose for a while now, and you guys arrested Catherine Crane instead of Barry and the judge. Now, let's be clear, Catherine was arrested for a good reason. She was colluding with the prisoners who tried to escape from..." "Tried? I think it's fair to say that they succeeded," I replied. "They literally shut the town down for days." "You know what I mean," Ronson sighed. "Oh boy, I guess Detective Good was right about you." "How so?" "You do like to, argue." I shrugged. "I'm not sure what you're accusing me of, but I've answered all of your questions. They'd arrested Catherine Crane on an unrelated charge. We thought they'd jumped the gun on the rental, but it was because she'd been a part of the escape plan for Waylon and the others. Or she had been until she'd gotten cold feet." Officer Ronson sat quietly, studying me as I thought things through. He tapped a finger beside his watch, then sighed. "All right then, Miss Smith. If that's all you've got to say about the matter, then I guess you're free to go." "That's it?" "One question, Ronson." He sagged. "Barry and the judge are both under arrest for the murders and for the attack on Good, right?" "Correct. We were building a case against Judge Boys." "But not against Barry?" I asked. "I can't share that kind of information with you at this time," Officer Ronson said. "Look, we're going to have another detective come in to help us around here until Detective Good is back on his feet, And if you've got questions, you can ask him when he's around, but for now. I rose, wiping my hands off on my jeans. Officer Ronson? Yeah? Is Detective Good all right? I didn't get a chance to see him. They wouldn't let me visit when he got hit. Because he was in critical condition, Ronson said. But he's going to be fine. They're allowing visitors now, so if you want to go see him, you should. I think he'd like that. My cheeks heated. Why? Just he talks about you all the time. The corner of Ronson's mouth lifted. Sometimes he says good things. Most of the time he complains. Think you really got under his skin. I wanted to laugh, but emotion clogged my throat. Thanks, Ronson. He walked me through the building and to the reception area at the front. I waved and exited into the afternoon. Come in, Big G, I murmured as I moved down the sidewalk. I think your Mini Cooper is a write-off. Reading you, ugly sweater. I'd rather not discuss it, as I'm still furious with you for putting yourself in danger. How are things at the nest? They have settled. Gamma's reply was terse. Big G, I did what I thought was necessary. You could have died, ugly sweater. You could have killed yourself and the target in the car with you. It was a ridiculous thing to do. I've spent all this time trying to make our nest welcoming for our new guest. The last thing I need is to lose you too. Me too? Yes. Believe it or not, I care about you, ugly sweater. I swallowed. Thanks, Big G. Don't pull a stupid stunt like that again, and get back to the nest as fast as you can. What's wrong? Images of murder and destruction flashed through my mind. One of the cats has left a fur ball in the library, Gamma said. I groaned. Ugly sweater inbound. Over. Chapter 22. 1 week later. How many times are you going to bring me flowers before you agree to go out with me? Aaron asked, from his bed, where one arm was in a sling and he winced when he inhaled. I fiddled with the bouquet of flowers in its crystal vase, rearranging it. Charlotte. I can't just let you agree to go out with me blindly, I said. Listen, woman, you've got to make sense when you talk to me. I'm in a vulnerable state. He was adorable, even with the scratch across his forehead, the broken arm, the bruised and battered body. It would be months before Good would be back on his feet, and I had visited him every day for the last 7 days now that I was able. I couldn't stay away, even though I wanted to. I want to go out with you, I said, but it's complicated. Eh? How? Well, first of all, you can't get out of bed, I said. So going anywhere is a challenge. Hey, hilarious. I know. I'm thinking of starting a career in comedy, I said. And second, I grabbed an uncomfortable chair and dragged it over to the side of his bed, then sat down. I held his hand, squeezing his fingers between mine and appreciating how they felt. Almost losing him, as a friend or whatever this was, had been painful and scary. What is it, Charlotte? Good asked. If you want to date me, there are things you can't know. Can't know. Things I can never tell you about myself, I said, or about my relatives and the people close to me, because if I had to tell you, it would endanger your life. Even telling you that is a bad idea. You realize I'm a cop. There's probably nothing you could say that. No, there's a lot I could say and do that would land you in a lot of trouble. The kind of trouble that leads to death. I had to be honest in this way. So, if you're interested in dating me, you need to know that. I might go missing sometimes. I might do strange things. I might not be able to tell you everything about me. Charlotte, what fun is that? It's not about fun. It's about safety. And if we were going to embark on any journey together, it would have to be like this. I won't have another person in trouble because of me. Good brushed his thumb over my knuckles. So, you must be really serious about me, huh? What? If you're giving me this whole I'm a dangerous woman speech. I rolled my eyes. Don't ruin it. Good chuckled, then winced. I don't know what you need to keep from me, and I don't care. I just want to go on a date, Charlotte, not get married." "You don't want to get married?" "Maybe. I don't know. Haven't really thought about it," Good said. "Apart from when I was a little boy and I used to dream of my wedding day." "You're kidding." "That wasn't obvious?" "If you weren't so incapacitated, I'd incapacitate you," I said. Good gave me a grin, and then he reached up. I leaned forward so he could touch my face. He stroked my cheek. "Thanks for the PSA about how much you have to lie to me." "Anytime. Anytime." "I still want to go out, even if it's just a short-term thing. Even if it's not serious," he said. "I like danger, in case you hadn't noticed." "You? Danger? Never. Never." He wheezed again, and I rose and drew closer to him. Aaron's mirth faded fast, his gaze flickering to my face, and then my lips. He crooked a finger. Our kiss was sweet and full of promises I couldn't possibly keep. It was also interrupted by a buzz in my pocket. "Darn," I said. "That's Georgina. I have to get back to the gossip inn." "You're abandoning me now, when it's so close to Christmas?" "That's exactly why I have to leave. We've got a special guest arriving," I said. "I'll come by tomorrow. Text me." "You can count on it." The drive back to the inn was taken at breakneck pace in the car I'd borrowed from Lauren, an old Ford that purred and spat when I started the engine. I rattled up to the front of the Gossip Inn, Gamma's lone figure on the front porch, a beacon in the early afternoon. Sunlight, Snowy, and Cocoa Puff sat on the porch railing like 3 guardian statuettes beside her, waiting for the storm to come. Because there was a storm brewing, and it wasn't just in the sky. Our esteemed guest Delta mission was about to arrive. I parked the pickup, then leaped out and ran up the steps to join Gamma. "You're late," she muttered, her hands clasped together over her neat turtleneck sweater. "She's going to be here any second." "I know." The wind whipped around the porch, lifting the hair from the back of my neck. Cocoa Puff turned his furry face toward the breeze and closed his eyes. Sunlight stretched out. Snowy merely watched, focused on the end of the driveway. "Do you hear that?" Gamma asked. I listened hard. The soft sound of a jingle, it sounded like an ice cream truck jingle, drifted on the wind. "Yeah, it sounds like." The music grew closer, and closer still, and an ice cream truck, bright orange and blue, turned the corner and rattled up the driveway toward us. "Is that?" "That's her," Gamma confirmed. The ice cream truck parked, and the woman driving it switched off the jingle. The truck door swung open, and the driver emerged. Short, slight, but strong. She wore a blue and orange shirt that bore the logo Jerry's Gelato on the chest. Her auburn hair, cropped close to her scalp, clashed with her uniform. She took the porch steps 2 at a time and stuck out a pale hand. "Nice to meet you, Georgina. Name's Jerry? Her fake name? You got any space in your freezer?"
This has been Carrot Cake Jailbreak by Rosie A. Point. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more cozy audiobooks.